Chapter 1253 Money Earning Tactic. Chapter 1253 Money Earning Tactic. Guild Leader, are we returning to the guild? Fire Dance asked. She had already made multiple trips to the Sea God's Temple, trading points for a total of 8,000 bottles of Sea God's Blessing. She had also seen the potion's effects, and she had to admit that it was a miracle tool for grinding and raiding dungeons. If players could increase their attributes by 10%, dungeons would become at least 10% easier. This way, players could lower the equipment and weapon requirements, and they could dispatch more players to difficult dungeons. The Sea God's Blessing also increased players' resistances by 100 points, making it even easier to raid bosses that dealt magical damage. Moreover, the potion had a duration of 12 hours. That was more than enough time for a 50-man team to raid a large-scale team dungeon. If they offered the Sea God's Blessing to their guild members in exchange for guild contribution points, their members could level up and upgrade their weapons and equipment much faster. No. We're heading to the Fire Dragon Empire, Sherfong said, shaking his head. The Sea God's Blessing was precious. If not for the Philosopher's Stone, it would not have been possible to obtain so many within such a short time. While it was not a bad idea to put it up for trade in the guild, doing so would expose his identity. Moreover, earning money was far more important right now. In the past, the Sea God's Blessing had sold for a maximum of 2 gold in Sea's End and 3 gold on land during its peak. Land players hadn't discovered the Sea God's Blessing yet, making this an excellent opportunity to make a fortune. If he waited until more players in Sea's End realized how important this potion was, and news of the potion spread to the mainland, he would lose the opportunity to sell it for a high price. Fortunately, there were a limited number of Sea God's temples available, and each temple only stocked 50,000 bottles of Sea God's Blessing each week. It wasn't even enough to satisfy Stormwind Town's players. So, the price shouldn't be affected overmuch. In any case, he had to earn as much as he could while he didn't have any competition. The Fire Dragon Empire was one of the 4 great empires. The empire stood at the peak of God's domain in both quantity and quality of experts. The empire was home to plenty of powerful adventurer teams. Thus, it was an ideal place to sell the Sea God's Blessing. He also had the option of selling the potions in Blackwing City. However, as the Sea God's Blessing was relatively affordable, more players would fight over it in the Fire Dragon Empire. Although he would have to spend quite a bit on teleportation fees, compared to the potential profits, the expenditure was negligible. Following which, Sherfong descended the stairs. As for Fire Dance, she activated stealth and followed as they traveled to the Fire Dragon Empire together. Since Fire Dance had picked up 8,000 bottles of Sea God's Blessing, Sherfeng's bag couldn't store them all. He needed help transporting the potions. HM? He's finally leaving? A hint of excitement flashed in Scorpion's eyes when he saw Sherfong exit the shop. Quickly, he finished the glass of liquor he had just ordered. Overall, he had waited several hours for Sherfong to leave the shop. Although it was common for assassination experts like himself to wait several hours at a time on a mission, stakeouts were tiresome. However, before Scorpion could celebrate, he saw Sherfong head towards the teleportation hall. After traveling all the way here, he doesn't plan to go out and level? Scorpion was confused as he watched Sherfong leave the town via the teleportation hall. Suppressing his bubbling frustration, he called out the system map and checked Sherfeng's current location. Flame Dragon City? Scorpion nearly cracked his teeth when he saw the location on the map. Flame Dragon City was the Fire Dragon Empire's imperial capital. The security there was several times higher than Stormwind Town's. It was even more difficult to take out a target there. Excellent! I refuse to believe you won't head out to level or quest at some point. Scorpion ground his teeth as he paid 7 gold, 20 silver to teleport to Flame Dragon City as well, his hatred of Sherfong growing ever stronger. A single teleportation fee had lightened his pockets by 20%. Sea's End was already quite far from the Fire Dragon Empire. Meanwhile, the fee for teleporting out of Sea's End was more expensive than elsewhere. Very players chose to travel to the mainland to level. Even if they did decide to do so, they would travel via a flying ship, which was much cheaper. Flame Dragon City. As the imperial capital of one of the 4 great empires and the venue for the Dark Arena, the player population surpassed the other empires' capitals. Moreover, the Fire Dragon Empire had a treaty of alliance with the several neighboring kingdoms, which resulted in 40% cheaper teleportation fees between these countries, attracting even more players. One could see plenty of player trading firms as they wandered through the capital's business district. Many independent adventurer teams also sold rare items monsters had dropped. It would be great if White River City were even half as impressive as this city. Shifeng sighed ruefully as he gazed upon Fire Dragon City's business district. 2-star shops were still extremely rare. Generally, only first-rate guilds had the capacity to set one up. However, as he walked through the business district, he saw plenty of 2-star shops. Moreover, Fire Dragon City had long since activated the flying transportation feature, allowing players to travel to leveling spots that could not be reached with teleportation arrays. The various trading firms displayed even more impressive merchandise. Even level 40 fine gold equipment was available for purchase. Only, the prices for such items were much higher than market value. It was clear that the shop owners did not want players to buy these items, intending to keep them on display. Only level 40 secret silver equipment and below sold normally. Even so, this was astounding. In Star Moon Kingdom, one typically only found level 40 secret silver equipment in the auction houses. After all, God's Domain's mainstream players had yet to reach level 40. Meanwhile, it was because these trading firms sold the best equipment available that adventurer teams visited so frequently. After all, they might come across weapons or equipment that suited them. However, Shifeng wasn't here to visit these shops. Rather, he was bound for the auction house. The Fire Dragon Auction House was the largest auction house in the Fire Dragon Empire. The empire itself ran the establishment. Players throughout the empire's various major cities could view every item sold here. As long as an item was of sufficient quality, one would not have to worry about it not selling. Only, the processing fee was somewhat expensive, as high as 15% of the final selling price. In addition, the auction house charged a storage fee. The longer an item lingered in the auction house, the higher the fee would be. If one sold an item that was not particularly attractive, they might actually lose money. After arriving at the Fire Dragon auction house, Fire Dance was amazed by the breathtaking view. The Fire Dragon auction house was humongous. It was even larger than Blackwing City's Blackwing auction house. It easily took up an area of 3 or 4 stadiums with a 50,000 capacity. Moreover, the auction house had 100 floors and was over 700 meters tall. A sea of players drifted in and out of the auction house. Independent players, members of small guilds, as well as members of large guilds were here to purchase materials. Shifeng wasn't particularly moved. After all, he had seen the Fire Dragon auction house when Flame Dragon City had been at its peak. Far more players had visited the auction house back then. After entering the auction house, one could see a large number of NPC waiters and administrators standing around the main hall. If players were lost, they could simply ask these NPCs for directions. These NPCs would then provide them detailed explanations of the auction house. Once inside the building, Shifeng approached the item sale area. As there were many players seeking to sell their items, despite so many NPCs, Shifeng had to wait for some time before his turn. "Sir, may I know what item you wish to sell today?" the female NPC staff member asked, smiling. "I wish to sell this item. Please appraise it," Shifeng said as he handed a bottle of Sea God's Blessing to the NPC receptionist. The Fire Dragon auction house operated somewhat differently from the auction houses in other kingdoms and empires. Normal items were not accepted here. Only items of bronze rank or above could be sold here. Furthermore, players weren't allowed to set any random price. They had to abide by the NPC's minimum price. Of course, players could set higher prices. "Sir, the starting price for the Sea God's Blessing is set at 1 gold, 20 silver. Storage for 24 hours will cost 3 silver, Or you can store the item for 48 hours at 6 silver. The NPC receptionist reported once she finished appraising the potion. I'd like to set the starting price at 1 gold, 60 silver and store the item for only 24 hours. I will sell 3,000 bottles in total. Sell 150 bottles every 1 hour, Shifeng said as he retrieved one bottle of Sea God's Blessing after another. Seeing so many bottles of Sea God's Blessing, the NPC receptionist was momentarily stunned. However, she recovered quickly and accepted the 3,000 bottles. Chapter 1254 Taking the Empire by Storm. Chapter 1254 Taking the Empire by Storm. After commissioning the 3,000 Sea God's Blessing bottles to the Fire Dragon auction house, Shifeng left the auction house with Fire Dance and hurried back to the teleportation hall. Guild leader, with the capabilities of the Fire Dragon Empire's players, they shouldn't have any problems using 8,000 Sea God's Blessings. Why are we setting out for another empire? Fire Dance asked, confused. We are too poor right now. With our limited stock of Sea God's Blessings, we have to employ hunger marketing if we want greater profits. Shifeng explained, smiling bitterly. If given the choice, he would sell all the potions here in one go rather than waste time running about. However, he had too many aspects that required funds. This was especially true for fees to reconstruct the 20 shops he had recently acquired from the secret pavilion as well as the diamond would cost. Naturally, he had to try to earn as much as possible. Although there were a lot of players in the Fire Dragon Empire and plenty of first-rate guilds, he couldn't place all of his eggs into one basket if he wanted the Sea God's Blessing to fetch a high price. After all, despite the potion's affordable price, it was still easily affordable for ordinary players. Normally, only guilds and powerful adventurer teams could buy the potion in bulk. Yet, there was a limited number of such adventurer teams and guilds in the Fire Dragon Empire, limiting how high the Sea God's Blessing's price could rise. Hence, he had decided to test the waters with 3,000 bottles first. Very quickly, Shifeng and Fire Dance traveled to the Beast Empire's Beast City. Meanwhile, Scorpion, who had been tailing Shifeng in secret, fumed with rage. Shifeng had arrived in Flame Dragon City less than an hour ago, yet he was leaving already. It wouldn't be so bad if Shifeng's destination were outside the city. However, of all the places Shifeng could have chosen, he chose the faraway Beast Empire. A one-way trip there from Flame Dragon City cost 3 gold, 74 silver. Not only had Scorpion failed to find an opportunity for his allies to ambush Shifeng, but he had also wasted over 10 gold. This was hard-earned money that he had saved to purchase a new weapon. While he was one of the Sacred Temple's peak experts, he had obtained most of his weapons, equipment, and skills himself. He was only slightly better off than the guild's elite members in that he could purchase top-tier items cheaply with coins or guild contribution points. Yet, now, he had spent nearly 1/3 of his savings just to follow Shifeng around. He even began to consider attacking Shifeng outright. Shortly after Shifeng left the Fire Dragon auction house, the Sea God's Blessing appeared in the auction house's potion window. Who's this seller? He's actually selling a potion for 1 gold, 60 silver. Has he lost his mind? Crap! Does he think he's selling dragon blood? The various guilds and adventurer teams' logistic members, who had come to purchase potions, were astonished when they saw the Sea God's Blessing. The intermediate regeneration and intermediate mana recovery potions they usually purchased only cost several silver per bottle. Even the mana mixture, which was slightly more valuable, only cost a dozen or so silver coins. Meanwhile, the mana mixture could temporarily increase a player's maximum mana by 10%. Yet, someone was actually selling a potion that no one had ever heard of for 1 gold, 60 silver. Moreover, that was only the potion's starting price. However, these logistics members quickly calmed themselves as they clicked to check the Sea God's Blessings attribute panel and read its introductory text. As logistics members, their task was to purchase all sorts of useful potions. Whenever a new potion appeared, they were required to investigate it. If they missed an opportunity to obtain a particularly precious potion, they would be severely reprimanded. However, as these players read the Sea God's Blessings introduction, Their mocking laughter died as an excited madness took its place. Leader, I discovered a super potion that increases all basic attributes by 10% and resistances by 100 points for 12 hours. If every member of our Royal Thunder team drinks this potion, we won't have any issues raiding Helm Mode team dungeons. A potion can do that? Buy them all. Quickly. But the potion isn't cheap. Not cheap? How much is it? As long as it isn't too outrageous, we'll take them all. The starting price is 1 gold, 60 silver per bottle. The various logistics members contacted their superiors. If the potion had simply cost 20 or 30 silver per bottle, they could make the decision on their own. However, the Sea God's Blessing's starting price was too high. They did not have the authority to approve such a large purchase. When they learned of the potion's starting price, the superiors in both the large guilds and the adventurer teams were stunned into silence. However, after a moment of silence, every one of these upper echelons issued the same command. Buy them all! While the price was indeed very high, its effects were astonishing. If used properly, it could easily elevate a team's strength to a whole new level. The potion might even enable a team to raid a dungeon of a higher difficulty, allowing access to higher quality weapons and equipment. Immediately, the various logistics members bid on the Sea God's Blessing. From the initial 1 gold, 60 silver, the price quickly rose to 1 gold, 61 silver, before rising again to 1 gold, 62 silver. The potion's price soared. At the same time, news of the Sea God's Blessing shocked many first-rate guilds and superpowers. How can such a potion actually exist? Investigate this potion's origin and the method to obtain it immediately. Unlike ordinary large guilds and adventurer teams, these first-rate guilds and superpowers were more interested in the Sea God's Blessing's origin. Immediately, they began to research the potion. At the same time, they sent their logistics members to purchase every available bottle. At most, the 150 available bottles would cost several hundred gold. Ordinary large guilds might hesitate to make such a large expenditure, but this amount of money was negligible to first-rate guilds and superpowers. As long as they could raid level 45 Helm Mode large-scale team dungeons, obtaining 2 or 3 pieces of level 45 dark gold equipment, they would make up for the loss with money to spare. Have these people lost their minds? It's already at 2 gold, 60 silver per bottle, yet they're still bidding? The first-rate guilds and superpowers' intervention caused the price of the Sea God's Blessing to skyrocket, instantly exceeding the various adventurer teams' budget. Leader, the potion's price has already reached 2 gold, 65 silver. By the looks of it, the price will continue to rise. I no longer have enough coins on hand to buy all of the potions. Damn it! This is definitely those first-rate guilds doing. But this is our best opportunity to take down a Helm Mode team dungeon. We cannot miss this chance. I'll have someone send you some money later. We don't need to purchase all of them. 50 bottles should be enough. Understood. At the end of the day, an adventurer team could not compete with a large guild's financial strength. Fortunately, adventurer teams didn't need all 150 bottles. They could manage with 1/3 of that. Unfortunately, while the various adventurer teams discussed their options, none of the large guilds intended to let the potions fall into anyone else's hands. Very quickly, the price of the Sea God's Blessing broke past the 4 gold threshold, exceeding the record high in Shifeng's previous life. Once the auction for the 150 Sea God's Blessing bottles concluded, Shifeng was stunned. System: the Sea God's Blessing you placed in the auction house has sold. After deducting the procedural fees, 5 gold, 16 silver has been sent to your bag. System: the Sea God's Blessing you placed in the auction house has sold. After deducting the procedural fees, 5 gold, 24 silver has been sent to your bag. System: the Sea God's Blessing you placed at the auction house has sold. After deducting the procedural fees, 5 gold, 19 silver has been sent to your bag. A series of 150 system notifications bombarded Shifeng. In the blink of an eye, he had gained nearly 800 gold. Chapter 1255 Competitors. Chapter 1255 Competitors. Guild Leader, what happened? Fire Dance asked when she noticed Shifeng's joyful smile. It's nothing. I just made a small profit, that's all, Shifeng replied, chuckling. In the past, the Sea God's blessing had only sold for 3 gold during its peak. Now he had managed to sell the potion for an average of 5 gold, 20 silver. That was nearly double the price back then. Moreover, this had only been the first batch. As the potion's fame spread, its price would continue to rise. The only problem was the attention from the various large guilds. By now, the various large guilds should have begun their investigation into the potion. With a little effort, it wasn't hard to learn about the Sea God's blessing. After all, the Sea God's blessing was one of the basic items available for trade in the Sea God's temple. Once the various large guilds discovered the potion's origins, they would try to obtain it for themselves by any means necessary, rather than purchase the bottles from the auction house. After all, it was much cheaper to obtain the potion from the Sea God's temple. With enough runic fragments, they could hire an NPC master alchemist to synthesize runic crystals. Employing a master alchemist might be difficult for ordinary players, but that was not the case for large guilds. Even if a master alchemist only had a 10% synthesis success rate, with each stack of runic fragment only costing 5 silver, the potion's total cost wouldn't exceed 1 gold, 50 silver. It was much cheaper than buying the potion from Shifeng. With the potion's growing popularity, I need to hurry. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng rushed back to Stormwind Town with Fire Dance. Now that the various guilds had caught wind of the Sea God's blessing, they would find a way to obtain them in Sea's End. However, the Sea God's blessing was not available indefinitely. Each Sea God's temple only stocked 50,000 bottles each week. If he secured all of the available Sea God's blessings, even if the other guilds had the required points, they wouldn't be able to trade for the potion. Meanwhile, throughout Sea's End, players had only discovered 10 Sea God's temples. As long as he had the funds, it wasn't impossible to clear the temple's stock. After all, he had already earned some funds from the first batch of Sea God's blessings. However, when Scorpion realized Shifeng was returning to Stormwind Town, he very nearly lost consciousness. After traveling around the continent, he returned to where he had begun. In total, he had spent more than 24 gold on teleportation fees. Scorpion wanted nothing more than to rip Shifeng apart with his own hands. Stormwind Town. When Shifeng returned to the grocery store, he discovered far more players in the business district. These players watched the grocery store like hawks, waiting for the NPCs to hang the wooden signboard that announced the purchasing of runic fragments. The shop really has become quite famous. I should be able to collect a lot of fragments. Shifeng smiled as he entered the grocery store. Upon his return, Shifeng also received the profits from the first round of sales in other empires. Although the potions were not as popular as they were in the Fire Dragon Empire, each bottle still sold for 5 gold or more. Overall, the 600 bottles that had sold in 4 other empires had earned Shifeng an additional 3,000 plus gold. Without hesitation, Shifeng equipped the grocery store with 3,000 gold and began to purchase runic fragments once more. Meanwhile, Fire Dance headed out to purchase the Sea God's blessing. Quick, look! The signboard is up again! Ha! I knew it wasn't a waste of time to wait. I've purchased a ton of runic fragments from other cities. I'll make a fortune! When the waiting players saw the signboard, they charged into the shop. Among them, there were a few merchant players trying to make a profit through the price spread. After purchasing runic fragments in other NPC cities, these merchant players would come running to the grocery store to sell the fragments for 5 silver per stack. Even if they only earned 1 silver per stack, selling 5 or 600 stacks would earn them 5 or 6 gold. Even experts couldn't earn that much money in a single day. He had offered to purchase each stack of runic fragments for 5 silver precisely to inspire these merchant players to do the dirty work for him, purchasing fragments from other cities and saving him plenty of time. In just 10 minutes, the grocery store had purchased over 6,000 runic fragment stacks. This was far faster than before. Unfortunately, Shifeng's synthesis speed remained constant as the Philosopher's Stone could only synthesize 1 runic crystal at a time. Time passed quickly. Despite players' rush to sell their fragments, Shifeng's funds didn't decrease in the slightest. On the contrary, he continued to gain more coins. Very quickly, Shifeng had accumulated 20,000 gold. Meanwhile, Fire Dance had purchased the remaining 42,000 bottles of Sea God's Blessing in Stormwind Town's Sea God's Temple and stored them in the grocery store's warehouse. Following which, Shifeng sent the 20,000 gold he earned to Melancholic Smile, contacting her and saying, "Melancholic, I just sent you 20,000 gold. Once you receive it, start the new shop's reconstruction." The sooner those 20 shops were complete, the sooner they could purchase diamond wood. After all, if the other guilds learned about the diamond wood's value, it would become extremely difficult to purchase even if Zero Wing had the funds. 20,000? Guild leader, how did you get so much money? Melancholic Smile was momentarily dumbfounded. She had been managing both the Candlelight trading firm and Zero Wing's finances all this time, so she was very aware of their financial situation. Both the guild and the trading firm continued to expand. As a result, the cost of the guild's benefits rose each day. They also had to continue purchasing more materials. There was also the fact that Stone Forest Town had recently become an intermediate town, so they had plenty of buildings to construct. Practically all of the guild's funds had already been allocated. The guild simply had no money to spare right now. "I just made some money selling potions. I'll send the money for the diamond wood a little later," Shifeng said, chuckling. His current earnings were only the tip of the iceberg. If he could monopolize the Sea God's Blessing before the other guilds gathered enough points to trade for it, he could easily make several times more than his current profits. It was for this reason that he had sent Fire Dance to visit the other Sea God's temples to exchange their points for Sea God's Blessing. While Fire Dance visited the various Sea God's temples, Shifeng wandered throughout God's domain, selling the Sea God's Blessings. Although he could only carry 4,000 bottles with him at a time, the potions' prices continued to increase. Excluding the Fire Dragon Empire, the Sea God's Blessings' maximum price had risen from 5 gold, 20 silver to 5 gold, 60 silver. The potion was far more popular than Shifeng had expected. However, by the time Shifeng was on his 4th visit to the various empires, the potion's popularity had calmed, the maximum price decreasing to roughly 5 gold. While Shifeng had expected the drop, he was surprised to see others selling the Sea God's Blessing in the various auction houses. He hadn't expected competition this early. Moreover, their starting prices were even lower than his, only 1 gold, 30 silver. Their sales volume was also quite significant. It was also because of this that the potion's prices had fallen so much. "Guild leader, the Sea God's Temple I'm in only has a little over half its stock remaining. There are less than 20,000 bottles left. The previous temple I visited had already traded a few thousand bottles as well," Fire Dance reported. "Should I purchase what's left of this temple stock?" Chapter 1256 Tyrant vs. Lunatic. Chapter 1256 Tyrant vs. Lunatic. "I've really underestimated them this time." Shifeng smiled bitterly as he shook his head. He had worried about the various empires' guilds, yet he had completely forgotten about the various naval powers in Sea's End. The Sea God's Blessing cost a considerable number of Sea God's Temple points. Regardless of how powerful the empire's guilds were, it was impossible for them to afford so many Sea God's Blessings in 30 hours or so. After all, an NPC Master Alchemist's synthesis success rate was very low. It could take anywhere from 10 to a few dozen attempts to succeed once. Factoring in the time it required to synthesize fragments, any guild would need a miracle to purchase a few hundred bottles within 30 hours, even with half a dozen NPC Master Alchemists. Even if the Empire's powers worked together, it was impossible for them to obtain more than 10,000 bottles. After all, there were only so many NPC Master Alchemists available. The only people capable of obtaining so many Sea God's Temple points were the local superpowers. For Sea's End superpowers, it was not difficult to obtain the temple points. They could obtain the points either through quests, or trading items such as runic crystals. Not only could one obtain runic crystals through synthesis, but they could also obtain them by killing boss-grade sea monsters in Sea's End. Guild leader, should we continue to purchase the potion? Fire Dance asked as she watched her phone on the screen. They had rushed to purchase the Sea God's blessing in the first place to avoid competition, limiting others' access to the potion. Now that the Sea God's temple she was in had already traded over 30,000 bottles, this would impact their ability to sell the potion for a high price. Of course. Why wouldn't we? At worst, we'll earn a little less profit, Cherfong said, chuckling. Although competition would decrease the price, they could still earn coins at a frightening rate. Moreover, he had the Philosopher's Stone to synthesize runic fragments. Even if the potion sold at its minimum price, he would still make a profit. Furthermore, he had already met his initial goal. The Sea God's blessing's price had surpassed his expectations. After repeated sales, he had over 60,000 gold on hand. It was enough to deal with matters such as his Tier 2 promotion, purchasing diamond wood, and reconstructing Stone Forest Town. They also had nearly 140,000 bottles in the grocery store's warehouse. Even if he sold the potion for 2 gold per bottle, he would have more than enough money to construct his city. Understood. After giving the matter some thought, Fire Dance understood Cherfeng's reasoning. She also felt that she had been a little too greedy. Stormwind Town. After returning to the grocery store, Cherfeng discovered that the crowd around the shop had disappeared. Now, there were only a few dozen people around. Every one of these players radiated an imposing aura, their very postures threatening anyone who dared to approach. Just as Cherfeng neared the shop, a robust, middle-aged man called out to him. "Friend, are you trying to sell off your runic fragments?" Cherfeng nodded, pretending to be just another adventurer trying to make some gold. "I'd advise you to go elsewhere then. The House of Seas has quarantined this grocery store. Anyone who enters the shop will be declared an enemy of the House of Seas. It isn't worth provoking them for a few dozen silver," the robust man explained. A few players had tried to go in, but the house's members had used the Tier 2 magic scroll and killed them as soon as they left the shop. Not only had the players lost a piece of equipment, but they've also become targets for the House of Seas. The player from the organization that used the scroll is only level 30. He's not worried about the NPC guards killing him or losing a few levels in jail. How tyrannic! Hearing the middle-aged man's warning, Cherfeng glanced at the 20-man team standing in front of the shop, and indeed, there were 5 level 30 players among them. These level 30 players, in particular, wore ordinary equipment. As for the other team members, they were either level 42 or level 43 players equipped with level 40 fine gold equipment. A few of them even wore 2 or 3 pieces of level 40 dark gold equipment. It was clear that these expert players were here to scare off ordinary and elite players. If an ordinary expert disregarded the warning, these House of Seas members would finish them off with a Tier 2 magic scroll. With this, the House of Seas had successfully barred Stormwind Town's players from selling their runic fragments to the grocery store. As long as players stopped selling their runic fragments, Cherfeng would lose his source of runic crystals. Although he could travel around cities to purchase runic fragments himself, his acquisition rate would be many times slower. The House of Seas has always been tyrannical. There are only a few powers in Sea's End capable of competing with them. If independent players like us provoke them, we won't survive in Sea's End, the middle-aged man said, sighing. The House of Seas is searching madly for the shopkeeper. They've announced that the shopkeeper will have to operate under their management if they wish to continue in Sea's End. I feel bad for the guy. Just by opening a shop, he earned the ire of the House of... Huh! You're going in? Don't be stupid. Several people have already tried and failed. The middle-aged man suddenly noticed Cherfeng approach the grocery store. If they target you, your life here will be over. Target? Cherfeng chuckled. They've wanted me for a while now. You're already a target? The middle-aged man suddenly realized a possibility. His eyes widening, he stammered. Could you be the person they are? That's right. I'm the player you feel bad for. Cherfeng nodded, grinning. He then continued towards the shop, leaving the middle-aged man behind. Has he lost his mind? The middle-aged man muttered, stunned. The House of C's had searched frantically for the grocery store's shopkeeper, yet this shopkeeper decided to reveal himself. It wasn't long before Shifeng reached the shop's entrance. Immediately, several House of C's members blocked Shifeng's path. Brat, this store under the House of C's control. Get lost! A level 43 shield warrior shouted. What if I don't? Shifeng asked, smirking. Kid, do you want to die? You dare to challenge the House of C's authority? The shield warrior bellowed. He then turned to the several level 30 players beside him, ordering, kill this kid. I want to see who would dare approach this shop after watching this one die. A level 30 Cursemancer revealed a Tier 2 magic scroll and began to activate it. Immediately, a black magic array appeared behind the Cursemancer. 20 pitch-black blades then surfaced from the array and shot at Shifeng. Although a Tier 2 magic scroll was ineffective against great lords of the same level, it could kill current players, who had yet to reach Tier 2, instantly. Unless the target used an invulnerability skill of some sort, there was no escaping death. Boom! 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 When the pitch-black blades collided with their target, the resulting impact threw dust and dirt into the air for several yards. The players wandering about the business district were stunned. What a fool. The level 43 shield warrior wore a contemptuous expression as he watched the cloud of dust and dirt. However, as soon as the shield warrior finished speaking, a familiar voice reached his ears. Are you sure about that? The shield warrior spun towards the voice's source. Before anyone had realized it, Shifeng had moved behind the level 30 Cursemancer. His blue long sword, which emitted arcs of electricity, protruded through the Cursemancer's heart. Although the Cursemancer tried to speak, his HP had already fallen to 0. His head rolled to the side as his body collapsed to the ground. A pair of level 30 bronze boots dropped beside his corpse. Chapter 1257 Declaration of War. Chapter 1257 Declaration of War. Impossible! The bystanders watching from afar were shocked when they saw They couldn't believe what they had just seen. Even an agile assassin couldn't dodge so many of those pitch-black blades. Not only was Shifeng unharmed, but he had also appeared behind the level 30 Cursemancer, killing the player instantly. It was unbelievable. This can't be real, right? Is he an NPC? The middle-aged man, who had warned Shifeng, muttered. The House of C's members surrounded Shifeng while everyone recovered from their shock. Kid, you really do want to die? The level 43 shield warrior assumed Shifeng must have used a skill to avoid the incoming spell, surprised by the swordsman's performance. He turned to the level 30 players beside him and said, You four attack together. I refuse to believe that this kid has any more skills to save himself. The 4 level 30s promptly took Tier 2 magic scrolls from their bags and activated them. 2 of the 4 Tier 2 spells were single-target spells, the others were AoEs. All 4 spells bombarded Shifeng, leaving him no room to dodge. Let's see how you dodge these attacks, the shield warrior sneered. They had long since familiarized themselves with the rules of combat inside towns and cities. The system wouldn't deem an attacking player's spell channeling to be aggressive until it locked onto a specific target. If the target retaliated, attacking first, the system would deem them the aggressor. The target had to wait until the magic scroll locked on before counterattacking. Normally, players would have no choice but to dodge, block, or use a life-saving skill to protect themselves. Shifeng had already used his life-saving skill. He would die, facing 4 magic scrolls, if he didn't have another. Want to run? I don't think so, Shifeng said, smiling when he noticed the players around him slowly back away to avoid the incoming assault. These people were 10 years too early if they thought they could use the game's rules against him. He sheathed Killing Ray and leaned forward to grab the retreating players, pulling them to his position. The retreating crowd gathered around Shifeng once more, forming a human shield. Damn it! He wants us to perish together. The level 43 shield warrior had never expected Shifeng's strength to be so high. No matter how they struggled, Shifeng still dragged them to his sides, using them as shields. It was already too late for them to dodge. They had no choice but to activate their life-saving skills to survive the incoming Tier 2 spells. Boom! 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 11 House of C's experts died as the series of explosions echoed throughout the district. All of the survivors' HP had dropped to critical levels. What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded. Am I hallucinating? Friendly fire? The House of C's members had used a similar strategy to attack other experts that had tried to enter the grocery store. They would surround the disobedient expert before attacking with Tier 2 magic scrolls. They would back away quickly after launching the spells. The experts were utterly helpless as they died. Now the House of C's members hadn't retreated once the spells had been launched as if they had developed Alzheimer's. On the contrary, they had moved closer to the target. Meanwhile, Shifeng had moved over a dozen yards away from his original position. He looked like a spectator, quietly observing the commotion. The Nightwalker's cape's effects really are impressive. As expected of a fragmented legendary item, Shifeng gazed at the battered House of C's members with satisfaction. The increase to his physique, reaction speed, and starting speed had felt pleasant as he moved. Who are you? Why are you trying to go against the House of C's? The level 43 shield warrior had lost his previous arrogant demeanor. All that was left was solemnity and fear. With a threatening tone, he asked, "Are you not afraid of the House of C's hunting you down?" As an expert, he knew full well what had happened even if the spectators didn't. Shifeng had actually managed to grab every one of them as they attempted to retreat, and drug them back to him. He had swiftly retreated a dozen yards away afterward. He had never even heard of this level of skill or reaction speed. He even wondered if it was something players could achieve. "You're asking for my identity even after searching for me for so long?" Shifeng laughed. He had no intention of hiding his ownership of the grocery store. If someone used their brain, they'd know only a player would purchase runic fragments in bulk at a high price. It would hurt his development in Stormwind Town if he did not respond properly now that the House of C's had come all the way to cause trouble. "So, you're the shopkeeper." Realization dawned on the shield warrior. "That makes things easier. Our guild leader has stated that your shop may continue to purchase runic fragments in bulk. However, you must hand over 80% of your profits. Don't even think about running a shop in C's End in the future otherwise. Our House of C's will hunt you to the ends of God's domain." The fear on the shield warrior's face faded when he spoke of the guild leader's command, reverting to the prideful, confident expression he had before. It was as if the guild leader's command was a system rule, and no player could challenge it. None of the C's End players present doubted the validity of those boastful words no matter how laughable they seemed. The House of C's was one of C's End's overlords. It was the #1 ranking overlord. Even the mighty Freedom Alliance, not to mention the other powers at the C's End, had to show respect to the House of C's. The House of C's also possessed a shop in all 12 major cities in C's End. It was obvious just how powerful the guild was. The House of C's could easily stop the players in C's End from entering a particular shop if it wanted to. The players in Stormwind Town proved this point. How was a shop going to buy or sell items if it didn't have any players visiting it? In other words, the shop was useless. Ha! Interesting. This is too interesting. Scorpion, who had been watching since the beginning, was ecstatic when he heard the shield warrior's words. The frustration from spending so much money on teleportation fees instantly vanished. "Not only will you become the Sacred Temple's target, but you'll also be the House of C's target. I want to see how you're going to survive on your own strength in the future." The House of C's strength wasn't comparable to that of a super first-rate guild, but it was still a veteran first-rate guild. The House of C's current strength was extraordinary because it had focused its development in C's End and had the support of major corporations. Identical Summer had sought cooperation with the House of C's for this same reason. If the House of C's wanted to deal with Shifeng, the Sacred Temple would have a much easier time assassinating him. If he couldn't run a shop in any town or city in C's End, he would have to explore and do quests to procure weapons, equipment, and other resources. They would have plenty of chances to strike. The House of Seas really is ruthless to ask for 80% of the profits. Scorpion was curious about how Sherfone was going to respond. In his opinion, Sherfone would most likely give up on the shop altogether. At least he could avoid provoking the House of Seas that way. The likelihood of agreeing to the House Seas' demands was very low. It would be no different than working for the House of Seas for free if he gave them 80% of his profits. Is this all your guild leader has to say? Sherfone asked. That's right. You need to give a reply today. Otherwise, we'll take your silence as a refusal to our invitation, and a declaration to make the House of Seas your enemy. The shield warrior said proudly. You want a reply today? Sherfone smiled. All right then. Go back and tell Tyrant Serpent that if he wants to play, I'll play with him until the end. Chapter 1258 Disturbance at Sea. Chapter 1258 Disturbance at Sea. Although Sherfang's tone had been casual, the entire business district had fallen silent when they heard his words. The spectating players stared at Sherfone with dumbfounded expressions on their faces. A lunatic! He's a lunatic! He actually dares to challenge the House of Seas by himself. Does he know what he just said? The bystanders started excitedly chatting about the situation. The House of Seas was one of Seas End's overlords. Only a handful of powers in Seas End were bold enough to provoke the organization, yet now, a lone player had declared war against this overlord. This was the first time such an incident had occurred in Seas End. Normally, the most they had heard was certain expert players killing an elite or expert member. Even so, such incidents became hot topics, independent players revering the player in question. Now that someone had openly declared war on the House of Seas, the various spectators commended him, even if it were just a boastful declaration. It was enough to shock players throughout Seas End. Meanwhile, news of this matter quickly spread to Seas End's official forums. Mysterious expert openly declares war on the House of Seas. The instant this post published, it sent waves throughout Seas End. Does this guy want to die? Or does he plan to delete his account and start a new one? After receiving such a challenge, the House of Seas will never live this down if they don't kill that player back to level 0. I heard that the House of Seas is trying to take 80% of that player's profits. Anybody in their position would retaliate. He's still a fool. The House of Seas has plenty of members and influence. They even have ways of hunting down assassin players. Since he's just a swordsman, he will have a hard time going out to level up from now on. That shouldn't be the case. The player has hidden his identity and appearance. Causing trouble for him won't be so easy. What do you know? Don't you know that the various large guilds have tracking experts? There are also a few tracking tools available. Not even wearing a black cloak will help this guy. After all, the black cloak can only hide a person's basic information and appearance. It can't hide a person's figure and class. With how many members the House of Seas has, they could easily send a few assassins to keep an eye on him. This guy is simply too amazing. Even if he dies back to level 0, his achievement will be recorded in God's domain's history. None of the players on the official forums had an optimistic view of Sherfang's foolish actions. However, they were happy to see such an incident. At the very least, the event would spark conversations during their daily visits to the bar. Meanwhile, back in Stormwind Town's business district, the several surviving members of the House of Seas were dazed for a long moment upon hearing Sherfang's reply. They even wondered if they had heard wrong. What a joke! They were the House of Seas, one of Seas End's overlords. Only a handful of superpowers in Seas End would dare to declare war against them. Even if they wanted to, they'd have to spend a long time considering the consequences before making a decision. They would avoid war unless it was absolutely necessary. Yet now, the proprietor of a measly grocery store had declared war on the House of Seas. This was simply a mockery. "This is your reply?" the level 43 shield warrior asked in a chilling tone. "That's right. No matter how many times you ask, my answer will be the same. If you want a war, then let's do it," Sherfang said nonchalantly. While the House of Seas possessed an extraordinary background, Unfortunately, Sea's end was simply too far away from Starmoon Kingdom. Even if his identity were exposed, Shifeng would not be afraid to declare war. Moreover, he needed to rely on the sea god's blessing as a long-term source of income. He also planned to stock some of the potions for the guild. Hence, he intended to purchase runic fragments long-term. If the House of Seas were just a business competitor, he wouldn't mind a fair competition. However, since the House of Seas dared to hinder his path to riches, he did not mind giving them a broken nose. "You have a death wish!" The level 43 shield warrior revealed a sinister expression. He then waved his hand. Immediately, 200 players suddenly surged onto the street. These players all wore the House of Seas guild emblem, and they were all level 41 and above. Quite a few had even reached level 43. The most inferior equipment they wore was level 40 fine gold rank, while quite a few had 4 or 5 pieces of level 40 dark gold equipment. Every one of these players radiated killing intent. They were clearly one of the House of Seas expert teams. Without paying heed to the NPC guards that had already reached the business district, they formed a tight circle around Shifeng. Unlike the House of Seas members that had blocked off the grocery store's entrance, these experts had originally been leveling and questing around Stormwind Town. They were not originally tasked to deal with Shifeng. Only after Shifeng's declaration of war, they had no choice but to take action. Meanwhile, Scorpion, who watched from afar, was overjoyed. "Ha! Now that this concerns the guild's reputation, the House of Seas won't let you get away even if they have to sacrifice their expert team." Scorpion was thrilled as he watched at Shifeng. Immediately, he contacted Uncle Lee and said, "Uncle Lee, I've found an opportunity to strike. The target is currently in Stormwind Town's business district and is surrounded by the House of Seas expert team. If Uncle Lee's party tried to assassinate Shifeng normally, the battle would likely drag on. If the fight dragged on for too long and the NPC guards arrived, killing Shifeng would become even more difficult. Moreover, they wouldn't be able to escape, perishing alongside Shifeng. Although they might have achieved their objective, their side would similarly suffer heavy losses. This was not a trade they were willing to make. After all, they were at least peak experts, not ordinary experts. Even if they had to die, at the very least, they had to make it worth it, trading one life for another rather than an entire party for one unknown player. Now, with the House of Seas members serving as a shield, not only would they distract the NPC guards, but they could also help expose Shifeng's weakness, giving Uncle Lee and the others an opportunity to strike a fatal blow. "No need to tell me. I've already seen the video on the forums. We're making our way there right now. If you see an opportunity and are confident, don't wait for us to take action," Uncle Lee instructed. "Uncle Lee, rest assured. That brat has made me waste over 100 gold. If I get a chance, I will take his life," Scorpion said. So far, he had toured the continent of God's domain with Shifeng 4 times. To continue his mission, he had even been forced to borrow over 100 gold from 100 Leaves. If he could not complete his mission, he would be saddled with debts. How could he possibly miss a chance to kill Shifeng? Despite Shifeng being a peak expert, against 200 experts from the House of Seas, he would undoubtedly lose his life. And in the event that he survived, he'd be forced to flee. As for the swordsman's powerful AoE skills, he couldn't use them easily inside the town. If he accidentally attacked any bystanders, the NPC guards would pounce. When the battle began, Shifeng would definitely be forced to exercise caution, preventing him from using many of his skills. Even a domain expert would expose gaps in their defense. As Scorpion contemplated the situation, the 200 House of Seas experts were finally in position. 3 level 43 shield warriors at the forefront immediately activated charge, rushing at him from 3 directions and giving Shifeng no room to dodge. Chapter 1259 First Strike. Chapter 1259 First Strike. Melees, distract him. Ranged players, get ready to attack, the black-clad ranger leading the House of Seas expert team commanded as he glared at Shifeng, who remained motionless. Use a magic array to suppress the NPC guards. Do not give him any chances to escape. Almost immediately after the ranger issued the command, a golden magic array appeared in the business district. 36 magical class players maintained the array, and it instantly enveloped the 10 or so NPC guards that had been making their way towards the battle. Like a steel wall, the golden barrier only trembled slightly when the NPC guards attacked it. The barrier showed no signs of cracking. Seeing this, the spectating players revealed solemn expressions. While they were shocked by the magic array's performance, they were even more afraid of the House of C's capabilities. The NPC guards in Stormwind Town were all level 120. To players like them, these NPCs were invincible. A single hit was all these NPCs needed to finish them off. These NPCs also safeguarded independent players like themselves. It was because of this that they dared to relax and rest in Stormwind Town. Yet now, a single magic array had trapped these invincible NPCs. They suddenly realized how easily the House of C's could deal with independent players. Is this the House of C's true strength? They are actually capable of taking out a magic array that can suppress the NPC guards' movements. What a powerful magic array! Even if that guy tries to buy time, he won't last long enough for the guards to save him. Seeing the trapped NPC guards, everyone became even more afraid of the House of C's. Many inwardly celebrated the fact that hadn't made an enemy of the House of C's. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Meanwhile, Scorpion, who had stealthily approached the center of the battlefield, was similarly shocked. He hadn't expected the House of C's to possess such a powerful foundation. However, the magic array also overjoyed Scorpion. Without the NPC guards, killing Shifeng and getting away safely would be even easier. Meanwhile, in the center of the battlefield, 3 level 43 shield warriors charged towards Shifeng from 3 different directions. As Scorpion watched the 3 shield warriors, he assumed Shifeng would counter or dodge the attack, but contrary to his expectation, Shifeng didn't move. However, when the shield warriors were only 8 yards away, starlight suddenly glittered around Shifeng. Pung! 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 3 crisp clangs resounded. Immediately, the 3 level 43 shield warriors flew backward, their bodies slamming into the ground. Their HPs fell at a rate visible to the naked eye as well, only stopping after reaching the halfway point. What did he do? The players observing the battle from a distance were stunned. None of them could comprehend what had just occurred. In the next moment, several streaks of blue light spread out from Shifeng's body, striking the 3 shield warriors and sending them flying again, critically injuring them. Just how much strength does he possess? Scorpion, who waited for an opportunity to strike, could not help his astonishment. Others might not have seen what had just happened, but he, as a peak expert, barely perceived what Shifeng had done. Just as the 3 shield warriors were about to close in on Shifeng, the latter had brandished his 2 swords. Without activating any berserk skills, Shifeng had sent each of the shield warriors flying with a single hit. Ordinary players wouldn't necessarily understand what this meant, but Scorpion, who had experienced many battles, understood. Shifeng's strength was already on par with a level 45 Great Lord. Although he had already known that Shifeng possessed frightening attributes after watching the man's previous battles, he never imagined that it would be this high. Just who is he? Fear flashed in Scorpion's eyes as he looked at Shifeng. He no longer believed that he was capable of killing the swordsman on his own. If Shifeng were only a player that possessed the strength of a level 45 Great Lord, he might not fear the swordsman this much, but Shifeng also had the combat standards of a peak expert. It would not be a trivial matter overcoming the combined factors. Such a high strength attribute. The black-clad ranger leading the House of C's team was also surprised. This was the first time he had encountered a swordsman capable of sending a shield warrior flying. After repelling the first attack, Shifeng did not hurry to launch a counterattack. Instead, he silently evaluated his current strength. After all, he had recently donned the Nightwalker's cape. He still did not have a concrete idea of how much he had improved. Only through actual combat would he understand his current capabilities. A normal attack is now enough to throw a level 43 shield warrior wearing top-tier equipment 15 yards. My strength should roughly be at the same level as a level 45 Great Lord. In the case of level 50 monsters, I should be at the standard of a High Lord. As expected, the Nightwalker's cape really is frightening. Sherfone was astonished. He hadn't expected his strength to rise by so much. Before equipping the Nightwalker's cape, his strength had only been on par with a level 50 Lord. Although there was only one rank between a Lord and a High Lord, level 50 was a major turning point for monsters. A level 50 Lord was significantly stronger than a level 49 Lord. Normally, only level 50, Tier 2 Berserkers wearing full sets of level 50 Dark Gold equipment could rival a level 50 Lord's strength. The only reason he achieved a similar result was the Heavenly Dragon's breath and the numerous epic weapons and equipment he possessed. Hence, it was truly inconceivable that he possessed the strength of a level 50 High Lord without activating a Berserk skill. Fragmented legendary items are truly amazing. Just by equipping 2, I have grown so much stronger. It really makes one wonder how terrifying those fellows with a legendary item and numerous fragmented legendary items were. Sherfone sighed ruefully as this thought ran through his mind. If his strength is so high, he must have activated a Berserk skill. But why don't I see any signs of one? The black-clad ranger was confused as he stared at Sherfone. However, he quickly shook the thought from his mind. Forget it. Even if he has ridiculously high strength, at the end of the day, he is still only one player. He can't fend off our attacks too many times. The second MT group, advance. Coordinate your movements with the first group to pin him down. Activate all of your life-saving skills and berserk skills. Healers, focus everything you have on them. Ranged players, start attacking. I want to see just how long he can last. Immediately, 3 Guardian Knights stepped forward. Joining the 3 Shield Warriors, all 6 MTs activated their berserk skills and life-saving skills as they executed a joint attack from multiple directions. Simultaneously, the dozens of ranged players standing in the distance launched their attacks, blotting out the sky with spells and arrows. Now that I've completed my initial evaluation, it's about time to this battle. Sherfone glanced at the 6 MTs, whose HPs exceeded 50,000, as he activated Heavenly Dragon's power. Immediately, his strength rose by 150%, HP by 500%, and defense by 300%. He then took a step forward and vanished. Where did he go? The black-clad ranger looked around. However, despite his efforts, he failed to find any traces of Sherfone. The rest of the players wore similarly blank expressions as they wondered how a living, breathing human had disappeared without a trace. As the crowd searched for Sherfone, the 6 MTs suddenly collapsed, numerous bloody roses blooming across their bodies. How? The black-clad ranger was flabbergasted when he saw Sherfone reappear and the MTs collapse. His mind failed to process what had just happened. Just what did he do? Chapter 1260 Key to the Abyss. Chapter 1260 Key to the Abyss. While everyone struggled with their confusion, Sherfone advanced and dashed for the attacking ranged players. Don't stop attacking him! Absolutely do not let him approach! The black-clad ranger shouted. He then retrieved the longbow from his back and pulled it into a full moon, firing a series of 5 arrows at Sherfone. The other ranged players continued to fire various spells and arrows. Although they had clustered their attacks, Sherfone continued forward while executing Sword's Orbit to defend himself. Not only had he avoided every attack, but he had also swiftly arrived before a group of magical class players. Suddenly, a blue flash escaped Sherfane's right hand. 2 elementalists, each with nearly 20,000 HP, collapsed instantly. Following which, Sherfone took another step forward and appeared before a Cursemancer. He struck again. In such a way, the House of C's member fell, one after another. Not even one lasted a brief moment against Sherfone. The swordsman dodged or blocked every attack against him. Despite the enemy's control skills, due to the aura of space, they failed to slow Sherfone down. At this point, the House of C's looked like a joke. Despite watching one ally collapse after another, the House of C's members were utterly helpless. How can this be possible? The level 43 shield warrior, who led the initial 20-man team, was stunned. He had expected Shifeng to die, yet against a single player, the House of C's experts were powerless. The shield warrior even wondered if Shifeng was, in fact, a player. Compared to the House of C's members, the surrounding spectators were truly dumbfounded, their eyes nearly falling from their sockets. The House of C's was one of C's End's overlords. Not only did the guild have plenty of experts, but many of these experts were ridiculously strong. Any one of them could easily slaughter the crowd. Yet, in front of Shifeng, these experts were little more than balloons. With a single poke from Shifeng's blades, these experts popped. Sure enough, it is too much to ask the House of C's to defeat him. Scorpion could not help but sigh and shake his head as he watched the House of C's members die. The gap in attributes between both sides was simply too vast. One needed more than numbers to bridge this gap. Shifeng fought like a humanoid great lord. Moreover, he was a great lord that had reached the Void Realm. With his sharp senses, Shifeng could easily predict the movements of those around him and counter in time. In contrast, none of the players surrounding Shifeng could cope with his attacks. In this battle, the House of C's members basically faced a great lord of the same level that could prevent them from blocking, dodging, or parrying. All they could do was throw their lives away. Among those present, who could possibly receive a direct attack from a great lord of the same level and live to tell the tale? Furthermore, Shifeng had activated his berserk skill. Scorpion was relieved that he hadn't joined the fray earlier. Otherwise, he really would have pointlessly thrown his life away as well. In a short moment, the House of C's expert team had lost over 30 members. Against Shifeng's relentless momentum, some of the House of C's members had lost their courage, losing strength as they slumped to the ground, paralyzed. The difference between their strength and their opponents had taught them the meaning of despair. How can such a player exist? The black-clad ranger wore an ugly expression. His was an expert team from the House of C's. Even against the Grand Lord, they would not end up in such a miserable state. Moreover, their guild's prestige was on the line. If they allowed Shifeng to have his way today, the House of C's influence in C's End would plummet. The ranger even regretted coming to Stormwind Town. Had he gone elsewhere, he wouldn't have been dragged into this mess. With things as they are now, I can't hold anything back. As the black-clad ranger watched Shifeng massacre his allies, he reluctantly took an ancient, grey scroll from his bag. He then unfurled it and began to chant the activation incantation. This magic scroll contained a Tier 3 curse, which he had saved for an important quest in the future. The curse was called Heaven's Punishment Blade. It was even capable of severely injuring mythic monsters. Even with invulnerability, the curse could not be avoided. The curse also dealt physical and magical damage. Die! The ranger shouted as he activated Heaven's Punishment Blade. Immediately, a pitch-black magic array formed above Shifeng. A massive, pitch-black sword gradually emerged, exuding a peerless aura. Heaven's Punishment Blade? Shifeng's expression darkened when he saw the pitch-black sword in the sky. The Heaven's Punishment Blade was a famous spell in God's domain because it could penetrate invulnerability. It was a super-rare scroll specifically used to kill abyssal guards. As the name suggested, abyssal guards defended the abyss passages. If outsiders opened a passage to the abyss and tried to enter, they would encounter the abyssal guards. Not only were the abyssal guards extremely strong, but when their HP fell to a critical level, they also became invulnerable. If one could not remove their invulnerability, they wouldn't have any hope of defeating these monsters. Hence, Heaven's Punishment Blade had become the key to the abyss. The curse was the equivalent of an entry ticket to the abyss. The abyss had a harsh environment and very few resources. However, while the abyss lacked most resources, 2 items could be found in abundance. The first was the 7 Luminaries Crystal. It was an item that any guild or major corporation that invested in God's domain sought desperately. The second item was the Magic Crystal. However, due to the violent mana ever present in the abyss, one could not just obtain magic crystals from the abyss. Instead, one had to obtain demonic stones, which were common, and refine them with alchemy. After refining demonic stones, one could obtain magic crystals and other precious byproducts. Countless guilds had tried to enter the abyss because of these two items. Shifeng had never expected the black-clad ranger to be insane enough to expend such a precious tool just to kill him. Very quickly, the pitch-black sword finished taking form. Without any flare, it descended on Shifeng, leaving no opportunities to avoid it. Shifeng could only receive the attack. Without hesitation, Shifeng activated the Nightwalker's cape's void shield. A protective barrier instantly formed around Shifeng's body. At the same time, Shifeng met Heaven's punishment blade with a counterattack. Boom! An explosion shook the business district as a deep crater formed under Shifeng's feet. What kind of spell is that? The impact created such a massive hole in the ground. Even Tier 4 spells shouldn't be that powerful. The House of Seas used a Tier 3 curse on a single player. They are shameless. In the end, it seems that even a monster-like player can't survive against the House of Seas. The crowd involuntarily gasped when they saw the crater in the middle of the business district. Although Shifeng had lost, he had lost with dignity. After all, he had forced the House of Seas to use such a powerful trump card. If not for the Heaven's punishment blade, the House of Seas would have been powerless against Shifeng. As everyone believed the battle to be over and the House of Seas members released sighs of relief, they suddenly saw a familiar figure standing before the black-clad ranger. How are you still alive?" The black-clad ranger stuttered, blood draining from his face as he gaped at Shifeng, who looked a little worse for wear. The Heaven's punishment blade could even rival a Tier 4 spell. Even mythic monsters would suffer heavy injuries, not to mention a Tier 1 player. Logically, Shifeng shouldn't have survived. However, what the black-clad ranger did not know was that, due to Heavenly Dragon's power, Shifeng's maximum HP had risen to over 200,000. Meanwhile, Void Shield created a barrier that had 10 times his maximum HP. Factoring in his defense and magic resistance, Shifeng survived Heaven's punishment blade with a little over 60,000 HP remaining. He had very nearly died. However, Shifeng did not offer the ranger an explanation as he swung Killing Ray. Although the ranger tried to defend himself with his bow, Shifeng adjusted Killing Ray's trajectory mid-swing, as if he had expected the ranger to defend himself, avoiding the bow, piercing the ranger's heart, and eliminating the player's HP. When the black-clad ranger, who had commanded the team, died, the House of Seas members' spirits finally broke, and they scattered. Shifeng didn't bother to chase down these players. After all, the NPC guards would hunt down anyone that had attacked him. If he attacked those that hadn't attacked him, the guards would hunt him instead. Chasing these players down was no longer important. As Shifeng looked for a place to sit and recover, he discovered that he couldn't remove any items from his bag. He couldn't access any of his skills either. Suddenly, a silent figure appeared behind Shifeng. Even with Shifeng's sharp senses, he failed to detect the figure's arrival. It was as if this figure had melded with the environment. After the figure appeared, a silvery white dagger thrust into the back of Shifeng's head, moving with incredible speed. "Young lad, you really are something. You are the first person I've found that's so difficult to sneak up on." Chapter 1261 Expert Companion. Chapter 1261 Expert Companion. Although Shifeng had sensed someone behind him, everything had happened too quickly. He couldn't use any of his skills or tools, and it was too late to turn around and defend himself. Instinctively, Shifeng bent his knees and leaped forward in an attempt to avoid the swiftly approaching dagger. However, no matter how hard Shifeng tried to avoid it, the weapon tracked his movements. In the end, he could only watch as the dagger closed in. Why is the domain realm expert here? After attempting to dodge, Shifeng realized that his attacker was an extraordinary expert. The discovery shocked him. If his opponent were merely a void realm expert like himself, even without his skills, he could avoid the sneak attack. However, his opponent could predict his movements and force him into a corner. It wasn't the dagger itself that was so fast. Rather, it was his enemy's reaction speed. Shifeng had encountered a similar situation against Ouroboros's soaring snake. Due to his innate talent, Soaring Snake's reaction speed was far beyond ordinary people. Meanwhile, Shifeng's current attacker was twice as fast as Soaring Snake. Based on Shifeng's understanding, only mysterious domain realm experts had such fast reaction speed. When the silver dagger struck, Shifeng's vision darkened as he fell into a fainted state. This move was none other than the assassin class's ambush skill. It could force its target into a fainted state for 2 to 4 seconds. Immediately after, another dagger bit into Shifeng's back. Backstab. Minus 10,249. What a tough nut. Uncle Lee was slightly surprised when he saw the damage above Shifeng's head. Both of his daggers were epic weapons. He had already activated his berserk skill as well. Even against a shield warrior or guardian knight with high defense, his backstab could easily deal over minus 20,000 damage, yet this attack had dealt a little over minus 10,000 damage to the swordsman before him. A short distance away, 5 cloaked players watched the fight. No matter how many times I see Uncle Lee's Vanishing Cloud or Agile Thunder God, they both feel so awe-inspiring. The cloaked ranger named Hungry Ghost said, sighing ruefully. That's to be expected. They are Uncle Lee's trademark moves. They might not seem special, but even domain realm experts can't sense Uncle Lee's presence when he uses Stealth and Vanishing Cloud. As for Agile Thunder God, the secret technique is exclusive to Uncle Lee. With that technique, he can launch instinctive attacks without having to process his enemy's actions on a conscious level, resulting in an inhuman reaction speed. How else do you think Uncle Lee became the guild's #1 assassination expert? A petite elementalist explained as she excitedly watched Uncle Lee work. Countless experts dreamed of grasping Agile Thunder God. Unfortunately, even now, Uncle Lee was the only player throughout the sacred temple that had learned the technique. Despite Uncle Lee's vigorous training, none of the guild's geniuses had learned it. The berserker wielding an aqua-blue spear said, "Ghost, it's about time to make your move. We don't have much time left." "Relax, Frostbite. That guy won't be able to move for at least 2 seconds. I can kill him twice with that much time." Hungry Ghost nodded, chuckling. Following which, he retrieved 4 black arrows from his bag, aiming for Shifeng and firing. With this, our mission is complete. Yet another explosion shook the district as the black arrows broke the sound barrier. In the blink of an eye, the black arrows crossed the distance of 30 yards and reached their target. Hungry Ghost had aimed for Shifeng's blind spots. Even if the swordsman could move, he couldn't avoid these 4 arrows. "It's finally over," Scorpion, who was in stealth, said, chuckling. Although he was disappointed that he did not get to finish Shifeng off personally, witnessing Uncle Lee's attack made the time he spent tracking Shifeng worthwhile. Uncle Lee retreated to the side and took a silver magic scroll from his bag. This was the rapid teleportation scroll that only peak dark players could obtain. Unlike return scrolls, which had a 10-second activation time, the rapid teleportation scroll only required 2 seconds. Moreover, the activation process could not be disrupted. At the same time, the scroll would form a magic barrier around the user that could both protect the user and prevent NPCs from sensing them. Right now, he needed to retrieve the item Shifeng would drop on death and leave Stormwind Town as fast as he could. As the 4 black arrows were about to slam into Shifeng, however, a black figure appeared before him. This figure had taken the hits. Surprisingly, the black arrows hadn't killed the figure instantly. Instead, they vanished upon coming into contact with them. This black figure was none other than the cloaked Fire Dance. Even before Shifeng had picked a fight with the House of Seas, he had asked Fire Dance to return to Stormwind Town. He had instructed her to watch from stealth, as he tested the Nightwalker's cape's effects. Moreover, he didn't want others to know that anyone else was related to the grocery store unless absolutely necessary. Only, he hadn't been expected to be ambushed by a domain realm expert. What? He has an assassin companion? Scorpion, who was in stealth, could not help his surprise. While the black arrows were frightening, assassins possessed wind steps and vanish. Both skills provided momentary invulnerability. No matter what kind of attacks they faced, they would not receive any damage during the invulnerability period. The assassin had used those two exact skills to protect Shifeng from the black arrows. Damn that scorpion! What has he been doing all this time? Hungry Ghost cursed. Didn't he say the target has been alone? Now that this assassin had disrupted their plans, it would become significantly harder to assassinate Shifeng in the future. Uncle Li, who stood a short distance away from Shifeng, remained extremely calm despite the unexpected development. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, his daggers ready to end Shifeng. Although they had to change their plan, it did not change the fact that Shifeng was still in a fainted state and unable to move. Even without the black arrows, he had other means of taking Shifeng's life. After all, Shifeng only had around a quarter of his HP remaining. The black arrows were only overkill. Meanwhile, Hungry Ghost and the others regained their composure and assaulted Shifeng from all directions. Although Shifeng now had an assassin protector, the assassin class specialized in single targets. Against so many attackers at once, she couldn't protect the swordsman. However, as Uncle Li and his teammate were about to reach Shifeng, 5 more figures appeared around him. Why does he have so many companions? Hungry Ghost and the others were stunned. 6 players now surrounded Shifeng, a full party. At this point, Scorpion's surveillance was a joke. What Hungry Ghost and the others did not know was that this was one of Thousand Transformations' additional skills, Phantom. It allowed Fire Dance to create 5 copies of herself. However, Fire Dance had not activated Phantom to shock her opponents. She used the skill to cope with so many enemies. Phantom allowed her to switch places with any of her doppelgangers without a cooldown. Even without moving, Fire Dance could protect her guild leader from any direction. Moreover, thanks to illusory power and Thousand Transformations itself, Fire Dance's strength was only inferior to Shifeng's. Dang! 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 Following which, Fire Dance easily blocked the incoming arrows and spells. Against Uncle Li's lightning-quick assassinate, Fire Dance countered with her fragmented legendary short sword. Pun! On her own, Fire Dance should not be capable of blocking Uncle Li's assassinate, which he empowered with Agile Thunder God. However, thanks to Thousand Transformations' hidden effect, she parried the attack in time. Fire Dance had only been forced to retreat by half a step even after receiving the attack. In contrast, Uncle Li had been forced 2 steps back, his HP falling by over 200. Chapter 1262 Fire Dance's Sword. Chapter 1262 Fire Dance's Sword. She blocked it? Hungry Ghost and the others were momentarily stunned. Not only had Shifeng's companions blocked all of their attacks, but one of his companions had even parried Uncle Li's assassinate. Even Domain Realm experts had a hard time against Agile Thunder God. After all, not only did the technique massively increase attack speed, but it also prevented the opponent from predicting the attack's trajectory. The technique was impossible to react to. Throughout the Sacred Temple, there were only a handful of people that could block Uncle Li's Agile Thunder God. Moreover, that was only if their mental clarity were at its peak, yet this assassin had blocked the old man's attack effortlessly. Why wouldn't they be surprised? Just who are these people? Scorpion was flabbergasted as he watched from a safe distance. It wouldn't have been terribly surprising to see an expert like Shifeng in Sea's End, but he had been joined by an expert capable of blocking Uncle Li's attacks. No one would believe that these two weren't backed by some superpower. After all, experts of such standards were rare even in super guilds. Meanwhile, Fire Dance focused on Uncle Li, who stood before her, her mind clear like never before. Her instincts constantly warned her that, against this expert, the slightest slip-up would cost her life. If not for Thousand Transformations' hidden effect, she would have fallen prey to Uncle Li's assassinate. Interesting. Although Uncle Li was slightly surprised that Fire Dance had blocked his attack, his resolution to kill Shifeng had not wavered in the slightest. Immediately, Uncle Li used shadow steps and appeared behind Shifeng, his dagger aiming for the swordsman's kidneys. Because he didn't use any skills this time, he could attack with both daggers simultaneously. With this, he drastically reduced the likelihood of Fire Dance blocking the attacks. Despicable! Although Fire Dance knew that Uncle Lee had used shadow steps, she reacted a moment too late. By the time she switched places with one of the doppelgangers and arrived behind Shifeng, either her superior attributes nor her speed could help her block the attacks. With no other choice, Fire Dance twirled the dagger in her left hand and slashed downwards, activating one of the Petrified Thorns skill. Petrification Domain. Immediately, all enemies within 50 yards were dealt 500% weapon damage and had their movement speed reduced by 50%. At the same time, Fire Dance's attributes rose based on the number of targets the domain had affected. However, as if Uncle Lee had been prepared for this, he used wind steps, becoming momentarily invulnerable and negating Petrification Domain's damage. Meanwhile, his two daggers struck Shifeng. -2,718. -2,259. To Shifeng, who still had over 50,000 HP remaining, those two attacks only took around 10% of his HP. Sure enough, normal attacks are not enough to kill him. Uncle Lee frowned, frustrated with Shifeng's defense and HP. As Uncle Lee was about to use the 5-star eviscerate he had accumulated, Fire Dance, who was faster, slashed 1,000 transformations at the man. Although Uncle Lee sensed the attack coming, he didn't want to waste the skill to block it. Quickly adjusting his footwork, he tilted his body slightly to dodge the incoming short sword. However, Uncle Lee's expression changed when Fire Dance swung her blade, multiple afterimages appearing around 1,000 transformations. How? Uncle Lee may have been surprised, but he was a domain realm expert. With the help of Agile Thunder God, he defended himself instinctively. Dang! A clang pierced the air when Uncle Lee's daggers collided with 1,000 transformations. Meanwhile, Uncle Lee was forced to retreat by 3 steps, a damage of over -500 appearing above his head. After landing the first strike, Fire Dance brandished 1,000 transformations once more, giving Uncle Lee no time to react. Although Fire Dance's reaction speed was slower than the old man's, she had an absolute advantage when it came to attack speed. Against countless sword lights, even Uncle Lee had to be careful. As a result, Fire Dance forced him back farther. Uncle Lee tried his best to counterattack, brandishing both daggers simultaneously, but Fire Dance simply responded by swinging 1,000 transformations. Innumerable sword lights flickered around the combatants, blocking the daggers. Again, the resulting impact forced Uncle Lee to retreat. Impossible! Hungry Ghost and the others, who were about to launch another wave of attacks, were stunned. To them, Uncle Lee was an unparalleled expert, yet that expert was at a disadvantage against Fire Dance. If news of this reached the sacred temple, it would cause an uproar in the guild. While Fire Dance and Uncle Lee clashed, Shifeng finally recovered from his fainted state. Seeing Shifeng regain consciousness, Uncle Lee knew that it was no longer possible to kill the man. He abruptly retreated to a distance before turning to Fire Dance, saying, "Little Missy, you really are astounding. Despite having not obtained a domain, not only did you block my attacks, but you also suppressed me completely. Among the many non-domain realm experts I've fought thus far, you rank 3rd. Might I ask if you are interested in joining us? If you do, I promise that you'll become one of the best assassins in God's domain. You'll reach heights that you haven't even imagined yet." Fire Dance was taken aback by Uncle Lee's sudden offer. She could not figure out what the man before her was thinking. They were currently engaged in a battle, yet the latter had extended a recruitment offer. Hungry Ghost and the others also heard Uncle Lee's offer. Their jaws dropped, and they stared at Fire Dance with envy and admiration. Uncle Lee was a domain realm expert. He was also the Sacred Temple's #1 expert. His evaluations were harsh. He only ever praised the guild's geniuses for their potential, yet he had just claimed that Fire Dance could become one of the best assassins in the game. Not even the Sacred Temple's top genius had enjoyed such praise. One could see just how much Fire Dance had impressed Uncle Lee. "Forget it. I will never join you." Fire Dance rejected Uncle Lee's offer without hesitation. "I doubt that I'll become God's domain's #1 assassin by joining your measly guild." Fire Dance's words instantly infuriated and frustrated Hungry Ghost and his companions. They sorely wished they could take the woman's place. They were talking about an offer for exclusive training under Uncle Lee. The Sacred Temple's geniuses hungered for such an opportunity, yet Fire Dance treated the offer as if it were an insult. "All right. If you change your mind, you can contact me with this. We will welcome you at any time." Uncle Lee could not help but sigh at Fire Dance's reply. He tossed her a communication scroll before turning to leave, vanishing. The communication scroll was a common tool in God's domain. Even if without being friends, they could communicate through the scroll. Only it needed to be bound to someone first, then the wielder could contact the initial owner at any time. The scroll was mostly intended for players that wished to hide their identities. In Uncle Lee's opinion, Fire Dance was still too young. She had only replied in such a way because she had yet to understand just how powerful the experts at the top of the world were. Only after Fire Dance had fought those experts would she learn how vast this world truly was. At that time, she would seek him out. Meanwhile, upon realizing that Shifeng had recovered, Hungry Ghost and his team used their rapid teleportation scrolls and left Stormwind Town. Seas End, Dark City Yasland. After using the rapid teleportation scroll, Hungry Ghost and the others arrived in Yasland, a lawless city. Even if one killed other players inside this city, the NPC guards paid no attention to the crime. The only reason these NPC patrols existed was to defend the city itself from those who sought to harm it. "Uncle Lee, the target is stronger than we expected. Moreover, he has companions following him in secret. Should we ask for the Punishment Legion's help during our next attempt? We'll have a greater chance of eliminating the target." Hungry Ghost asked Uncle Lee, who had just teleported into the city. The Punishment Legion was the Sacred Temple's Assassination Legion. The Legion had specifically been formed to deal with other superpowers' key figures. Although the Legion's members were weaker than their party members individually, they had the advantage of numbers. They also had gear that gave them an advantage against other players. "No need. We're giving up on this mission," Uncle Lee said, shaking his head. "As for the guild leader and 100 Leaves, I'll explain the situation to them personally. You guys can go level up and upgrade your gear for now." Chapter 1263 Becoming Famous at Sea. Chapter 1263 Becoming Famous at Sea. The Reef Sea, famed for its coral reefs, pearls, and other precious materials, was a level 40 to level 55 high-resource map. A short distance away from Reef Island, dozens of speedboats attacked a massive, level 53 sea monster. Unlike normal sea monsters, this was a boss, a chieftain-rank sea monster. It was also one of Reef Sea's overlords. Right now, this overlord had very little HP remaining. "Its HP is at 20%. Advanced speedboats, back away! Let the bronze speedboats tank it," 100 Leaves commanded through the team chat. After the Freedom Alliance redistributed the leveling maps, the 8th Fleet's members traveled to the Reef Sea and Echo Canyon to level. The first thing they needed to do was kill the map's field bosses. The first reason was to guarantee their ship's safety when exploring these maps, allowing their members easy access to towns and leveling spots. The second reason was to obtain the weapons and equipment these bosses dropped. Each map had a limited number of field bosses. Once these bosses were killed, they could take anywhere from 1 to 3 days to respawn. Each time players killed these bosses, they dropped fewer top-tier weapons and equipment when they respawned. Hence, when the area's major powers discovered a field boss, they swarmed to kill it immediately. This was also why conflict was so common in leveling maps. As independent players passed, they watched the 8th Fleet with shock and envy. "The Freedom Alliance's 8th Fleet is so strong! They're actually challenging a 9-claw squid so soon after arriving. Even the Freedom Alliance's 2nd Fleet never dared to challenge this boss. Haven't you heard? There's been a huge shift in the Freedom Alliance's ranks. The 8th Fleet currently ranks the 2nd strongest. As for the 2nd Fleet, it's ranked 10th. We really got lucky this time. If they kill the 9-claw squid, it'll be easier to get to Reef Island." The passing players chatted as they watched the battle. Not only was the 9-claw squid one of Reef Sea's overlords, but it was also Reef Island's gatekeeper. Reef Island was a valuable location due to its ancient ruins. One could obtain plenty of treasures and top-tier items in those ruins. However, players had to get past the nine-claw squid before they could reach Reef Island. Some time later, the nine-claw squid shrieked as its body slammed into the water. A large number of items then dropped around its body. The spectators drooled when they saw the loot. As this was the first time the nine-claw squid had been killed, it had dropped plenty of items. They could count at least 50 in total. Moreover, every item was top tier. If put up for auction, the items would easily sell for large sums. Of course, the Eighth Fleet had also paid a considerable price for these items. In total, they had lost 3 advanced speedboats and 11 ordinary speedboats. The fleet's bronze speedboats also received varying amounts of damage. The repairs would be costly. Repairing ships was far more expensive than repairing weapons and equipment. Even an ordinary speedboat with half of its durability would cost around 2 or 3 gold to repair. Advanced speedboats could cost anywhere from 10 to 20 gold. Needless to say, bronze speedboats were even more expensive. Moreover, advanced ships shipwright. Someone collect the loot. Everyone else, rest up. We'll dock on Reef Island soon. 100 Leaves instructed. She then noticed the communication request from Uncle Lee. Revealing an excited expression, she accepted the call and asked, "Uncle Lee, have you dealt with the issue?" As far as she was concerned, once she dispatched Uncle Lee's party, Shifeng had no hope of survival. Uncle Lee must have contacted her to report his success. "No. The assassination failed," Uncle Lee said, shaking his head. "Failed?" 100 Leaves was momentarily stunned. Quickly, she reacted and asked, "Is he that strong?" Uncle Lee was the Sacred Temple's #1 assassination expert. Both Vanishing Cloud and Agile Thunder God were advanced techniques that even Domain Realm experts struggled to learn. Agile Thunder God, in particular, allowed one to become practically invincible in melee combat, giving the player the upper hand in every exchange. That's not the case. When we attacked, his companions showed up to protect him. When Uncle Lee thought about Fire Dance, he was disappointed that he couldn't recruit the woman. "Uncle Lee, whatever you need for the next assassination attempt, just ask. I can even hire other assassination experts to help you." After hearing about Shifeng's companions, 100 Leaves had a rough guess as to what had happened. Usually, assassination attempts were carefully planned. An unexpected factor would significantly decrease the chances of success. Unfortunately, now that the first attempt had failed, Shifeng would be on guard, making it even more difficult to kill the swordsman. "I've already discussed this with the guild leader, and we have agreed to give up this mission for the moment," Uncle Lee said. "Give up? Why?" 100 Leaves demanded. "The target and his companions are all extremely powerful. I believe that they are supported by some superpower. Although we still don't know which superpower is moving in secret, our sacred temple has other matters to attend to. We don't have enough energy to fight another superpower," Uncle Lee said seriously. "My guild leader had decided to ignore them temporarily. We'll decide what to do after we take control of the Freedom Alliance." The guild leader said that? Although 100 Leaves was hesitant, she had to obey the guild leader. "I understand. I'll make sure to secure the first fleet position in the next siege battle." "Ah, right. Also, the target has declared war on the House of Seas. Don't poke your nose into this matter. Let them wear each other down." Uncle Lee warned her before disconnecting the call. "He declared war on the House of Seas? Why? Has he lost his mind?" 100 Leaves gaped, wondering if she had heard wrong. The House of Seas was even stronger than the entire Freedom Alliance. It also had the support of a major corporation. It had both financial strength and manpower in abundance. Moreover, although it wasn't as powerful as a super first-rate guilds, due to the situation in Sea's End, it was much stronger than veteran first-rate guilds. Yet Shifeng had openly declared war against the guild. She wasn't sure if Shifeng was brave or just foolish. Immediately, 100 Leaves launched an investigation into the matter. Before, she had focused on commanding the battle against the Nine-Claw Squid, so she had been oblivious about anything outside of the battle. Who is this guy? When 100 Leaves received the information her subordinates had collected, she was astonished. Sherfone was simply overbearing. He actually intended to fight the House of Seas to the bitter end. Meanwhile, a storm brewed in the House of Seas' main headquarters in Meteorite City. Great! A single player dares to declare war against the House of Seas. Now we're a laughingstock in Seas End. Pass the word. Use everything we have to take down Stormwind Town. I want him obliterated. Send the Blood-Drinking Legion to keep an eye on him as well. If he sets foot outside of the town, kill him. I want everyone in Seas End to know that no one gets away with provoking the House of Seas. Tyrant Serpent, the House of Seas guild leader, laughed in anger after watching the declaration of war video on the official forums. Since he wants to sell the Sea God's Blessing, I'll give him a chance. From now on, sell our Sea God's Blessings in our shops. Sell them at 1 gold per bottle. Didn't he recently purchase a large stock? I want to see just how much money he can afford to lose. Chapter 1264 Number 1 at Sea. Chapter 1264, Number 1 at Sea. Inside the House of Seas meeting room. Tyrant Serpent's orders shocked the guild's upper echelons in the room. This was the first time they had seen their guild leader so enraged, angry enough to make rash decisions. Guild leader, isn't that a little too far? We're already spending 1 gold for each Sea God's Blessing we obtain. If we sell the potion for 1 gold, won't we be working for nothing? Moreover, our stock is limited. If we don't sell enough potions, that player will continue to make a profit, yet if we sell too many, we might not have enough for our members. It could hurt our exploration of Death's Waterfall. The House of Seas had stumbled upon the secret land, Death's Waterfall, by coincidence. The area's resources were beyond abundant. It was even home to quite a few ancient ruins. The small corner of Death's Waterfall they had explored thus far had already boosted the guild's strength significantly. Among their initial harvest, they had obtained over a dozen bronze speedboats. They had also obtained a mysterious iron speedboat. There was even less need to mention the number of top-tier weapons and equipment they had found. The areas of Death's Waterfall they had explored thus far were only the tip of the iceberg. The farther they ventured, the more frightening the treasures they encountered. However, the secret land's environment was severe. If players did not possess sufficiently high magic resistance, survival was out of the question. Hence, the House of Seas had purchased the Sea God's Blessing in bulk. Fortunately, the House of Seas had met an NPC Grandmaster Alchemist, which allowed them to synthesize runic crystals at a much higher success rate. However, while the cost of synthesizing the runic crystals had decreased significantly, it still wasn't cheap. To explore Death's Waterfall, the House of Seas invested tons of coins and resources each day. Moreover, the guild increased its investments by the day. The more players they could send into the secret land, the faster they could explore the area. Naturally, they would send as many players as they could. This was also why their guild was in short supply of coins. However, after seeing the popularity of the Sea God's Blessing in the various empires, they had found a solution to their money problem. They could sell some of their stock to fund the exploration. But selling the Sea God's Blessing at cost would gain them nothing. Don't worry. Previously, we only purchased runic fragments for 6 silver per stack to prevent others from synthesizing runic crystals. If we purchase the fragments in bulk for 4 silver per stack, that brat won't have any hope against us. Tyrant Serpent said, chuckling. You just need to focus on finding an opportunity to kill that player. Hearing this, realization dawned on the upper echelons. After all was said and done, Stormwind Town was only a town. The teleportation fees to get there weren't cheap. Meanwhile, the House of Seas had shops in all of the 12 major NPC cities as well as numerous NPC towns in Seas End. If players only planned to sell a small number of fragments, they could earn far more by selling them for 4 silver per stack rather than traveling to Stormwind Town to sell them for 5 silver per stack. By doing this, not only could they hinder Shifeng's financial progress, but they could also lower their cost of obtaining the Sea God's Blessing, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They doubted that Shifeng had the assistance of a Grandmaster Alchemist. If this competition persisted long-term, Shifeng would eventually fail to make any money with the Sea God's blessing, suffering losses instead. Guild leader is the best. If that brat had agreed to cooperate from the very beginning, he could have kept 20% of his profits. Now, he'll be kicked out of the competition and hunted endlessly. Following which, the House of C's upper echelons left to fulfill Tyrant Serpent's orders. As the House of C's had discussed Shifeng's situation, players also discussed the matter on C's official forums. Someone had long since uploaded Shifeng's declaration video against the House of C's. No one had ever expected this outcome. Despite the House of C's sending hundreds of experts at Shifeng, the guild suffered a miserable defeat, its experts either dying or running away with their tails between their legs. Shifeng's battle video had also mesmerized many independent players. Whether it was his positioning, dodges, or attacks, compared to the other expert battle videos they had seen, this video was worlds apart. In prior battle videos, they had seen experts take on 20 opponents at most. Moreover, those crowds usually consisted of ordinary players with poor equipment and low levels. The higher quality videos usually only recorded a single expert taking on 3 or 4 elite players. Even so, the videos were educational and helped them to learn many combat techniques. However, Shifeng's battle video showcased a fight against the House of C's 200-man expert team. Even if some were not true experts, they were not that far off from it either. Just one of these players could easily overwhelm multiple independent players like themselves, yet Shifeng had suppressed all 200. If these players were distracted in the slightest while watching the battle video, they'd miss how the House of C's members had died. Some of them had even opted to play the video in slow motion. Their eyes couldn't keep up with Shifeng's speed, after all. Such a mythical battle completely redefined their definition of expert. Compared to Shifeng, the usual experts were nothing than a joke. The boss of this grocery store is invincible. He actually killed close to half of the House of C's 200 experts by himself. I wonder if he'd accept an apprentice? I have to ask him to teach me his ways. I wonder if that shopkeeper plans to establish an adventurer team or guild? If he does, I have to join even if I go bankrupt. How can he move so fast? Is he even human? He's a monster. There isn't a single player in C's end that's a match for him. Even those famous experts can't block one of his attacks. Ha! The House of C's is in trouble this time. They've provoked such an expert. If this expert wants revenge, the House of C's members will have to be careful. The House of C's has indeed knocked on the wrong door this time. However, it won't be easy for this expert to cause trouble for the House of C's. After all, the guild has nearly 1 million members. Even if he can kill a player each second, it would take him days to annihilate the guild. Even if he goes out of his way to hunt them down, what about his level and equipment? At the end of the day, one man's power is limited. At most, this player can annoy the House of C's and damage its reputation. Even so, he's still pretty impressive. The House of C's is one of C's end's overlords. Have you ever seen the House of C's suffer such a miserable defeat before? The forums buzzed with conversation regarding Shifeng. The most debated topic was about who would emerge victorious. Would it be Shifeng? Or would the House of C's triumph? Although the outcome was unknown, everyone agreed on one thing: the grocery store's proprietor was undoubtedly the #1 expert in C's end. For a time, many players dreamed of being Shifeng's students. Because of this, the grocery store's popularity skyrocketed. By now, practically everyone in C's end knew about it. In just half an hour after Shifeng's battle with the House of C's experts, Stormwind Town was packed with players, the town's player population increasing by several times. Many had come out of admiration, while some had come to convince Shifeng to teach them. There was also a portion that had come to sell their runic fragments. Players swarmed the shop. Even getting through the entrance was now a problem. Guild leader, too many players are trying to sell their runic fragments. The grocery store's warehouse is nearly at full capacity. Why don't we start renovating the shop? We can bring in some of Candlelight's products, Fire Dance excitedly suggested after entering the second-floor room. While she had been out purchasing Sea God's blessings, she had gained a general understanding of Sea's End. She had to admit that the business standards here were significantly inferior to the Starmoon kingdoms. The area's lifestyle players were also low quality. If they sold the Candlelight trading firm's merchandise here, the items would definitely be in high demand. Chapter 1265 Town Manager. Chapter 1265 Town Manager. Promote Candlelight's merchandise? Fire Dance's sudden suggestion tempted even Shifeng. However, he quickly came to a decision and shook his head, saying, "It's not time for that yet." "Why?" Fire Dance was confused. "The House of Seas can't touch us in Stormwind Town for now. Even if we sell our merchandise here, all they can do is watch. They might not be able to touch us, but that's not the case for everyone," Shifeng said as he glanced out the window. He pointed at the large group of players wearing the House of Seas guild emblem that had appeared on the street below. "Speak of the devil." Fire Dance curiously followed his gaze. Immediately, she noticed 100 House of Seas members outside the grocery store. These players had blocked off the shop's entrance, preventing anyone from getting close. From now on, anybody that enters this grocery store will be an enemy of the House of Seas. Anybody that ignores this warning will reap the consequences as soon as they leave the town. The House of Seas will also start purchasing runic fragments without limit for 5 silver per stack, the leading House of Seas member announced. The representative instantly had the attention of every player in the business district. They hadn't expected the guild to adopt the stick and carrot approach. Rather than provoking the House of Seas, they'd be safest to sell their fragments to the guild. Fire Dance also realized what Shifeng had meant. The House of Seas might not be able to attack them, but the guild could easily deal with other players. As Fire Dance considered the situation, several more groups appeared on the street. These players were all House of Seas members, and they were all level 41 and above. They were decorated with excellent weapons and equipment, the most inferior of which was level 40 secret silver rank. After making their appearance, these players marched towards Stormwind Town's entrance. It was obvious they intended to grind in Stormwind Shelter. "The House of Seas sure moves quickly." Shifeng smiled faintly as he watched the House of Seas elite teams leave town to grind. "It seems we need to hurry. Guild leader, leave this to me. Even if the House of Seas bars players from selling us their fragments in Stormwind Town, I can set up stalls in other towns and cities. I refuse to believe they can corner us completely," Fire Dance said confidently. She was an assassin. She was also incredibly strong. It would be very difficult for the House of Seas to keep track of and assassinate her. Although it would be tiresome running about numerous towns and cities, and she could only carry so many runic fragments in her bag space, they could still purchase quite a few Sea God's blessings with 4,000 fragment stacks. The House of Seas was dreaming if it thought it could stop them from purchasing runic fragments. "No. We'll stop collecting runic fragments temporarily. Our priority is to secure ownership of Stormwind Town," Shifeng said, chuckling. "Secure ownership?" Fire Dance was surprised. "That's right. The towns in Seas End are slightly special. If we want to develop a shop here, we need to manage the town," Shifeng said, nodding. "The town managers wield powerful authority. Although they cannot banish players from the town, they can prevent players from setting up shops. Players would have to sign a contract with the town manager before doing so. This is why there are so few shops in Seas End and why the business development here is so poor. Currently, Stormwind Town isn't under any player's control. If we want to establish a shop, we need to take control of Stormwind Town quickly. If we let the House of Seas get there first, we'll be doomed." This was also why the House of Seas had dispatched several elite teams to grind in Stormwind Shelter. To become a town's manager, one first needed to have the most contribution points of any player in that town. They would then have to take the manager's test and pass it. Only then could they become the town's manager for a single month. Once the month ended, if the player still had the highest contribution points, they could continue to serve as the town's manager. If not, they would be replaced. It was a brutal competition. In contrast, the player towns on land did not have time limits. As long as no one else conquered the town, they could hold the position. Should I summon the Dark God's Legion to help? Fire Dance asked. If they wanted to obtain contribution points quickly, they needed more manpower. Currently, the Dark God's Legion was only second to Zero Wing's main force. Although the members were not as high-leveled as Season's experts, when it came to combat standards, they could easily triumph. If it came to a fight, the Dark God's Legion members would have no problems taking on 3 of the House of C's experts. No need. We're more than enough for this, Sherfone said, waving his hand. While having the Dark God's Legion wasn't a bad idea, this problem couldn't be resolved with more manpower. After all, the requirement to become a town's manager depended on an individual player's contribution points, not the contribution points of a guild or team. Part of the reason that he had spent 10,000 gold to purchase a Stormwind emblem was to obtain Stormwind Town. Only the House of Seas had given him no choice but to accelerate his plans. With the Stormwind emblem, players were granted authority within Stormwind Town. With this authority, players could accept advanced town quests, which would allow them to gain town contribution points far more quickly. After all, a large fraction of the TCP's players obtained came from quests. Moreover, the higher a quest's rank, the more TCPs it awarded. This was why the various powers fought for town emblems. Synthesizing runic crystals is boring. Let's pay a visit to the Sea God's Temple, Sherfone said as he stood. In the past, Stormwind Town had been a miniature holy land, which God's domain's various superpowers had fought over. War had been common here, each conflict reaping easily over 500,000 lives. To take control of the town, these powers first had to grind for contribution points. Aside from the daily town quests, plenty of hidden advanced quests and rare quests were available. However, only players with the town emblem or a particular level of authority could accept these quests. In the past, the Sacred Temple had obtained Stormwind Town in part due to a rare quest. Players could accept this quest repeatedly as long as they could pay the price. Every time players completed it, it awarded more contribution points. Many players with authority had known about this quest. However, almost all of them had disregarded it as a waste of both time and manpower. To them, the contribution point reward wasn't worth the price. For a while, no one had accepted it. However, one player from the Sacred Temple had persevered and stubbornly completed the quest, again and again. After his 9th completion, he had more contribution points than any other player in Stormwind Town. This was a shortcut to collecting contribution points. Although everyone eventually learned the truth about this quest, no one else had ever completed it 9 times. Stormwind Town's Sea God's Temple. Shortly after Sherfone entered the main hall, he noticed quite a few players following him. The crowd even included a stealth assassin. Although none of these players wore a guild emblem, it was obvious that they were from the House of Seas. They sure are diligent. Well, continue following then. That is, if you can. Sherfone simply smiled as he noticed the House of Seas members. He walked up to an NPC receptionist and said, "Hello? I wish to meet with Vice Temple Master Arnold. Sir, please follow me." Upon seeing the Stormwind emblem on Sherfang's chest, the NPC receptionist nodded before leading Sherfone to the 2nd floor. Fire Dance waited for him in the 1st floor hall. As Sherfone saw to his business in the Sea God's Temple, a sudden discovery shook the various empires on land. Some shops were actually selling the Sea God's blessing. Moreover, the potion only cost 1 gold per bottle. Chapter 1266 Dragon's Blood. Chapter 1266 Dragon's Blood. Apocalypse Empire, Death Whisper Hill. An army of over 100,000 undead guarded the Death Whisper fortress. A legion of 1,000 players clashed with the constant stream of undead. These undead wore tattered armor and wielded swords and shields. Their movements were organized, and even the weakest among them was a level 42 elite, while the strongest included level 46 lords. If a normal, 1,000-man legion faced this army, they would be terrified. However, This 1,000-man legion killed the undead with a militaristic efficiency, acting as if this situation were just a matter of course. Several hundred MTs raised their shields as they held the undead back, none of them even attacking the monsters as they focused on defense. With the limited space, the MTs maneuvered their shields and displayed impressive technique as they prevented the undead from breaking past their line. As for the DPS players behind the shield wall, they launched an unrelenting assault. Occasionally, they used AoE attacks, dealing high amounts of damage to a cluster of monsters. Good. DPS, prioritize chieftain rank and above monsters. Healers, keep an eye on your mana. If it falls below 30%, retreat, switch players with a backup healer, and recover. Phoenix Rain commanded her legion while attacking a Lord-ranked monster. She remained wholly unperturbed despite facing down an undead army led by 100 lords. It seemed as if this battle were completely under her control. As Phoenix Rain was commanding the battle, Blue Phoenix, who wielded a dark blue crystal staff that radiated the epic rank glow and wore a complete level 45 dark gold set equipment for elementalists, walked up to her leader's side. Blue Phoenix then reported quietly, "Big Sis Rain, we just received news that a shop in Chaos Rock City is selling the popular Sea God's Blessing. Moreover, the potion only costs 1 gold per bottle." "What? Why is it so cheap?" When Phoenix Rain heard Blue Phoenix's report, a hint of surprise slipped through her calm exterior. "Is the information reliable? Or is that shop just trying to become famous, selling a small number for such a low price?" The Sea God's Blessing had become a strategic resource, which God's Domain's superpowers competed over. Its effects were wondrous for exploring secret ruins and raiding dungeons. Among the Sea God's Blessings sold in the Apocalypse Empire, Phoenix Rain had only obtained a little over 500 bottles. Miracle and Battle Wolves had snatched the majority of the potions. Meanwhile, she was saving these Sea God's Blessing as a trump card to raid large-scale Helm Mode team dungeons and the competition on Thunder Island. Previously, the cheapest Sea God's Blessings in the Apocalypse Empire's auction house had sold for 6 gold. Even after deducting the processing fees, the players selling the potion would get over 5 gold per bottle, yet someone had decided to sell it for 1 gold. No matter how she looked at it, this felt like fake news. She had long since investigated the Sea God's Blessing. The potion could only be purchased from the Sea God's Temple. The only way to obtain a large quantity in a short time right now was to trade in runic crystals. However, runic crystals were even rarer than magic crystals. Other than defeating boss-grade sea monsters, the only reliable way of obtaining them was to synthesize runic fragments. Unfortunately, the synthesis was expensive. Initial estimates put the cost of 1 bottle of Sea God's Blessing at a minimum of 1 gold, 50 silver. If unlucky, the potion might even cost 2 gold. Although her people had tried that method, the results had been disappointing. After all, they knew very few NPC master alchemists. Moreover, unless they achieved a certain level of favorability with these NPCs, they would not receive any help. Most importantly, each Sea God's Temple had a limited number of Sea God's Blessings. By the time they had amassed a large number of runic crystals, the Sea God's Temple they had visited had run out of stock. "I thought the same thing. But according to our reports, the shop has already sold more than 1,000 bottles. Many large guilds have given up on purchasing the potion in the auction house. Only independent teams with flimsy information networks are bidding on the potions," Blue Phoenix explained. "This is interesting. Have you found out who runs that shop yet?" Phoenix Rain asked, chuckling softly. "Yes. The House of Seas owns the shop. It is a warehouse-type shop that the House of Seas operates to collect materials and potions that cannot be found at sea." Blue Phoenix then sent Phoenix Rain the related information. Chaos Rock City ranked in the tens among the many NPC cities in the Apocalypse Empire. It was insignificant compared to the Imperial capital. With enough money early in the game, anyone could obtain land in the NPC cities ranked beyond 10th place. None of the superpowers would pay any attention to these small cities. Taking advantage of this fact, powers such as the House of Seas, that were not based in the Apocalypse Empire, had purchased the lands. One of the reasons for doing so was to set up a foundation for any potential development. They could also set up a shop to serve as their eyes in the Empire while they used it as a warehouse of sorts. Their competitor must be quite strong to force the House of Seas to this. Phoenix Rain chuckled. Since the House of Seas wants to stomp its competition by lowering the potion's price, we'll use this opportunity to buy as many as we can. However, we cannot let the House of Seas' competitor die off too quickly. Have someone contact the competitor and tell them that we wish to have a chat. Understood. Blue Phoenix promptly began to contact her subordinates. While Phoenix Ran and Blue Phoenix had conversed, the other major powers had sent their people to investigate the situation. After all, they all knew that the House of Seas had a very strong backer. They were curious to know who was capable of forcing the House of Seas into this corner. Moreover, whoever was responsible was capable of securing a large quantity of Sea God's blessings. If the other party were strong enough, they could consider forming a partnership. If not, all the better. Stormwind Town, Sea God's Temple's second-floor reception room. After waiting in the reception room for some time, Sherphone watched a stern, gray-robed, old man nearing his 70s enter the room. Although this old man's hair was fully white, he brimmed with spirit. Moreover, the instant this old man appeared, Sherphone felt the space around him radiate an immense pressure. He felt as if he would be turned into meat paste if he made any sudden movements. This old man was none other than Arnold, the Vice-Temple Master of Stormwind Town's Sea God's Temple. On the surface, the NPC's information showed that he was a level 160, Tier 3 Great Mage. In reality, however, he was a Tier 4 Great Wizard. Only due to his last battle, he had fallen ill, falling a tier as a result. This was the beginning of the rare quest chain. Young adventurer, what business do you have with me? Arnold asked indifferently as he watched Sherphone. As the Sea God's Temple's Vice-Temple Master, his status was extremely high. If not for Sherfang's Stormwind emblem, he would not be worth this NPC's time. Arnold's cold greeting didn't particularly surprise Sherphone. Smiling, he answered, Lord Arnold, I've heard that, to protect this town in the past, you fought a desperate battle against an abyssal monster. In the end, you used a curse to kill the monster. However, you suffered a backlash as a result. I have an advanced healing potion with me. I hope that it can be of some help to your injuries. Saying so, Sherphone took an advanced healing potion from his bag. Thank you, young adventurer, Arnold said, his tone no longer cold and indifferent. He then shook his head and said, However, you are better off saving this advanced healing potion for yourself. I know full well what kind of wound I suffer. It is not that easy to treat. Even the water of life cannot help me. May I know what may help you recover, Lord Arnold? Sherphone asked. Young adventurer, I do not wish to belittle your strength, but curing my wounds is too difficult. If you really wish to help me, you must first collect a drop of dragon's blood, Arnold said, chuckling. He then turned and left the reception room. System, Rare Hidden Quest. Heroes Past. Triggered. Do you wish to accept? Sherphone accepted the quest without hesitation. Sure enough, the quest is the same as it was in the past. Sherphone released a sigh of relief. After all, he did not have a deep understanding of Sea's End. Much of his information contained falsehoods. Fortunately, the information regarding this quest had been true. The first item this chain quest required was the super rare herb, Dragon's Blood. When consumed, players would permanently gain anywhere from 10 to 20 strength. Very few players were willing to trade such a precious item for a few TCP. Following which, Sherphone left the reception room and headed downstairs. Fire Dance, who was in stealth, approached with an anxious expression and reported, Guild leader, this isn't good. The House of Seas is selling a large number of Sea God's blessings in shops throughout the various empires. Moreover, they are selling them for 1 gold per bottle. Everyone has stopped buying the potion from the auction house. In addition, the House of Seas is purchasing runic fragments without limit in the various towns and cities for 4 silver per stack. I'm afraid that it won't be long before they buy out all of the runic fragments other players have accumulated. If that happens, it won't be easy to purchase fragments in bulk anymore. Chapter 1267 Frightening Influence. Chapter 1267 Frightening Influence. The House of Seas is quite bold, Cherfone muttered, revealing a bitter smile when he read the information Fire Dance had given him. Aren't they afraid that they'll go bankrupt? Selling the sea god's blessing for 1 gold per bottle was simply foolish. It was the equivalent of harming oneself to damage the enemy. By doing so, either side would profit. While the House of Seas could recover from the losses if it endured, if it lost the competition, its efforts would go to waste. Unlike the House of Seas, which could sell the potions in its shops through the various empires, Cherfone was at a disadvantage. He could only sell the sea god's blessing for a minimum of 1 gold, 2 silver in the auction house. In this case, he only sold a very small number of sea god's blessings each day. He would make barely any money. Guild leader, are we still going to sell the sea god's blessing? Fire Dance asked. Of course we are. Since the House of Seas wants to fight to the bitter end, I'd like to see how long they can keep this up, Cherfone said, smiling nonchalantly. Get a group of trustworthy assassins from the guild over here and have them sell our sea god's blessings in the various empires. We'll sell the potion for 60 silver per bottle. Limit the sales volume to 3,000 bottles per empire per day. Have them work in 3-man groups and rotate. Instruct a few others to split up and head to Seas End cities to purchase fragments in bulk. Since the House of Seas will buy the fragments at 4 silver per stack, we'll buy the fragments at 5 silver per stack. Keep our prices 1 silver higher than the House of Seas. To any other player, selling the sea god's blessing for 60 silver per bottle would result in a loss. Fortunately, that wasn't the case for Cherfone. If he purchased runic fragments at 5 silver per stack, it would only cost him 12 silver, 50 copper for each bottle of sea god's blessing. By selling the potions at 60 silver per bottle, he didn't get as much profit. Even so, profit was profit. The House of Seas could only blame itself for picking a fight with the wrong player. Understood. Fire Dance smiled. Had the House of Seas chosen to challenge them properly, both sides would have made a profit. Now, however, the House of Seas had shot itself in the leg. Following which, Fire Dance contacted the guild's elite assassins and had them hurry to Stormwind Town. Meanwhile, Cherfone brought 4,000 bottles of sea god's blessing back to White River City. He planned to store them in the guild warehouse and let the guild's core members trade GCP for the potions. At the same time, he intended to search for dragon's blood. Dragon's blood was also known as draconic herb. It was extremely rare. Even if one scoured Seas End, they wouldn't find it. Normally, it was a treasure that only bloomed in kingdoms and empires that produced herbs. To obtain the herb, a player needed luck. Even Cherfone would have a hard time finding the herb. Hence, he would rely on the candlelight trading firm to purchase it for a high price. Otherwise, he never moved to the next part of the quest chain. White River City's teleportation hall. As soon as Cherfone returned using the return scroll, he discovered a flood of players teleporting into the city. There were at least twice as many players than before. Among them, there were members of large guilds belonging to other kingdoms and empires. He easily counted members of 14 first-rate guilds in the teleportation hall. There were also a large group of Battle Wolves members. For a moment, Cherfone wondered if he had mistakenly teleported to the Beast Empire's capital. What's going on? Cherfone was surprised as he observed the teleportation hall. Before Cherfone could figure out what was happening, he heard players discussing the candlelight auction. There sure are a lot of people going to the candlelight auction this time. No kidding. Not only will the auction offer slots to enter the holy city of Titan, but they're also selling bronze mounts and personal houses. The popularity of the holy city's slots goes without saying. And every player wants a personal house. Not only can you train in a high mana density environment, but you can also take advantage of the NPC shops selling rare items. It'd be so convenient to travel to and from Stone Forest Town and the nearby leveling maps. That's right. Aside from large guilds, plenty of famous adventurer teams have come to participate in the auction. I have heard that they are all here to get one of Stone Forest Town's personal houses. It's a pity that the starting bid for the houses is 300 gold. I would have tried to buy one for myself if it were cheaper. That's already considerably cheap. Stone Forest Town is the #1 player town throughout Starmoon Kingdom and the neighboring kingdoms. Practically every player in the teleportation hall chatted about the candlelight auction and Stone Forest Town. When they talked about Stone Forest Town, they wore yearning expressions. Has Stone Forest Town become so popular? Sherfone was slightly surprised. While he acknowledged that Stone Forest Town was a valuable location, he hadn't thought that it would attract so many players from other kingdoms and empires. After all, Stone Forest Town's location was gradually growing less profitable. By the time mainstream players were over level 50, the town would lose its competitive edge. The only advantage the town would have at that time would be its mana density and the NPC shop's rare items. White River City, Candlelight Trading Firm. Players crowded the 7-story tall building's entrance. Originally, only players with 10 gold or more could enter the shop. However, due to the high number of participants, the trading firm had been forced to raise the requirement to 100 gold. Even then, the designated auction venue, which could accommodate 10,000 people, was full to the brim. Even the VIP rooms were not enough. Originally, only those carrying over 2,000 gold qualified to use the VIP rooms. Now, only those with 10,000 gold or those from superpowers could use the rooms. Most first-rate guilds didn't have 10,000 gold lying around, yet the 30 VIP rooms were occupied. The candlelight auction was more popular than anyone had expected. Melancholic Smile, the auction's host, was stupefied. She found it truly hard to imagine that a mere auction, held by a player-operated shop, could attract so many superpowers and famous adventurer teams. Melancholic Smile wasn't the only one surprised. Even the various powers that had come to attend the auction were shocked to discover so many competitors. Normally, only superpowers auctions attracted so much attention, yet an upstart guild had achieved the same results. Moreover, these powers had all come of their own volition. None of them had been invited. Meanwhile, in a VIP room on the 2nd floor. Guild leader, I've already checked. 7 super guilds and super first-rate guilds are in attendance. Practically every first-rate guild from the neighboring kingdoms and empires are here as well. Purple Eye reported to Galaxy Past. There really is no competing with Zero Wing. Galaxy Past smiled bitterly as he watched the sea of players in the first-floor hall. Only after many years had Galaxy Past developed the Star Alliance into a first-rate guild. However, if the Star Alliance held an auction right now, they'd be lucky if even 5 or 6 first-rate guilds attended. In contrast, Zero Wing had only begun its development after God's Domain launched, yet it had surpassed his many years of effort. Galaxy Past had to admit that the comparison was odious. What kind of reaction will Singular Burial have if he finds out about this? Galaxy Past muttered. Some time ago, Heaven's Burial had announced that it would hold an auction at the same time as the Candlelight Trading Firm. However, Heaven's Burial had become a laughingstock. Chapter 1268 Foundation That Exceeds Expectations. Chapter 1268 Foundation That Exceeds Expectations. The candlelight auction's turnout exceeded everyone's expectations. As everyone waited quietly for the auction to begin, a stalwart-looking man seated in a second-floor VIP room and carrying a great sword across his back exclaimed, "Boss Sirius, the Candlelight Trading Firm is awesome. Despite this being its first auction, it can already compete with the Dark Auction." Indeed. Although the Candlelight Auction is no match for the Dark Auction, in terms of the number of major powers participating in this auction, I'm afraid that it is already nearing the level of Super Guild's auctions. Sirius, who sat beside the stalwart man, nodded. He, too, was surprised. After his defeat against Sherfong in the Dark Arena, he had investigated Zero Wing thoroughly. However, while he knew that Zero Wing's overall strength could rival that of a first-rate guild, he had never imagined that the guild would be this powerful. From the moment he had set foot in White River City, practically every one of his expectations had been surpassed. Whether it was the business district or the standards of the players in the city, White River City was superior to many kingdoms' capital cities. In God's domain, a guild's capabilities weren't determined by its strength alone. The status of its main city was also important. Oftentimes, the prosperity of a city determined the development of a guild. Currently, White River City's prosperity was not one bit inferior to Starmoon City. If not for the new expansion pack, which caused dark cities to appear near various kingdoms' capitals, White River City would have most likely surpassed Starmoon City by a large margin. If not for the Candlelight trading firm's intention of selling the slots to enter Titan City, he really wouldn't have discovered that Zero Wing had already developed to such a degree. Meanwhile, in another room, a handsome man glared, displeased, at the crowded first-floor hall. "Pavilion Master, my people have finished the investigation into the situation. So many people are attending this auction to bid for Stone Forest Town's personal housing and the advanced mana armor kits," a dignified young man reported. Although this young man simply stood there, he seemed like the center of the universe. Moreover, he radiated a terrifying aura. Even the man's companions, who were level 42 experts, wouldn't get within 10 yards of him. This young man was none other than the monster of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion that had grasped a domain at a very young age, Martial Dragon. Zero Wing is actually capable of such a grand auction. No wonder why Rain has such an optimistic view of this guild. It's a pity that, even after attracting so many customers with the Holy City slots, Zero Wing only has such pitiful items to sell. Nine Dragons Emperor sneered when he saw Melancholic Smile walking up to the stage. If this auction were organized properly, it could attract so many more major powers in the future. It would massively boost Zero Wing's development. After all, these major powers had money. Anyone else would only have spare change. Zero Wing would never have attracted the true major powers if not for the Holy City slots. As Nine Dragons Emperor fell silent, the auction officially began. Under the crowd's attentive gaze, Melancholic Smile, who wore a luxurious, blue dress, approached the front of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Candlelight Auction. This auction will have 2 phases. During the first phase, we will sell items that have been carefully selected by our own auction house. The second stage will be a bartering session with the auction house as an intermediary. However, to ensure the quality of the items offered for trade, we will collect a processing fee of 10 magic crystals or 3 gold coins for each item. For materials specifically, we will charge 15 magic crystals or 4 gold coins per stack." As Melancholic Smile finished explaining the auction's flow, a commotion swept through the crowd. "Crap! This is fraud! Even a first-rate guild's auction wouldn't dare charge 10 magic crystals for every item. That's right! How can you be this greedy?" Players in the first-floor hall shouted their indignation. Although many of the major powers present had attended the dark auction before and knew about these bartering sessions, Candlelight's high price was ludicrous. The dark auction only dared to charge a high price because it was the best auction throughout God's domain. Only extraordinary existences were invited. "Ha! Zero Wing sure is interesting." Nine Dragons Emperor could not help but laugh when he heard Melancholic Smile's explanation. "However, this is a good opportunity to earn some money from the major powers. After all, a few of the superpowers here have come to bid for the Holy City slots. Whether it is the adventurer teams, independent players, or guilds, none would miss such a golden opportunity to trade high-value items. Such a shameful behavior would earn the various major powers' ire. Needless to say, the Candlelight auction wouldn't happen again. Even Phoenix Rain's reputation in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would be soiled for supporting Zero Wing. Just what is Black Flame thinking?" Yuan Tiexin stared at Melancholic Smile in confusion. "Is he so desperate for money that he's willing to abandon his reputation?" The first auction was always the most important. Asking for such an unreasonable price would only incur the wrath of the various major powers. None of these powers would likely visit the auction house in the future. Purple Jade, who sat beside Yuan Tiexin, was also confused. Based on her understanding of Black Flame, he wouldn't make such a newbie mistake. Meanwhile, as Melancholic Smile saw the attendees' reactions, she revealed an expression that seemed to say, As expected. Originally, she had planned to set the processing fees at 1 magic crystal or 30 silver coins per item. This way, they could more or less guarantee the quality of the items while avoiding such a negative reaction. After all, the candlelight auction was relatively small compared to something like the dark auction. Players weren't likely to offer high-quality items for trade. The candlelight auction had only attracted so many superpowers and first-rate guilds due to the Holy City's slots. Yet, Sherfong had insisted on increasing the price. It was obvious he was treating the various attendees like fools. However, now that things had already developed to this point, Melancholic Smile could only endure the complaints while starting the auction. We will now begin the auction. The first item we are offering is a magic whale skin, Melancholic Smile said as she gestured to the semi-transparent screen above the stage. The screen displayed an image of the magic whale skin as well as its attribute panel. Suddenly, the venue fell silent. What? Everyone was stunned after reading the item's introduction. The various major powers, particularly the superpowers, had already begun to develop their naval forces. Hence, they understood just how important ships were and were madly investing manpower and resources into obtaining high-ranking ships. These major powers wanted to upgrade their high-ranking ships to ease the fights against sea monsters. These organizations were even purchasing bronze rank strengthening items at astronomical prices. However, such strengthening items were extremely rare, no less than the high-ranking ships themselves. Even if one obtained such an item, they'd refuse to sell it. After all, if one could strengthen their own ships, their power at sea would increase by a large margin. Yet, the Candlelight trading firm was actually auctioning off a dark gold ranked strengthening item. Chapter 1269 Crazy Start. Chapter 1269 Crazy Start. The Candlelight auction has even obtained a dark gold strengthening item? These attributes are ridiculous. I've heard that bronze strengthening items can only increase a ship's durability by 2 points. Yet the magic whale skin can increase a ship's defense by 10% and durability by 10 points. It can even increase movement speed by 3%. The various guilds' upper echelons in the first floor hall panted as they stared at the magic whale skin. Ordinary players might not yet understand the game's ships, but the various large guilds present understood them very clearly. If an item like the magic whale skin were used to strengthen a bronze speedboat, it could improve the speedboat's performance significantly. Meanwhile, a speedboat could be enhanced to a total of 5 times. If one fully enhanced a bronze speedboat with magic whale skins, the speedboat's performance might even exceed mysterious iron speedboats. However, strengthening a bronze speedboat with a magic whale skin would be the epitome of luxury. At the very least, only mysterious iron ships would qualify for such a powerful strengthening item. Black Flame is quite generous. He has decided to use such a valuable item to open the auction. Yuan Tiexin was slightly astonished when he saw the magic whale skin. The various major powers had spared no effort to get ahead of others at sea, yet Zero Wing was giving such a wondrous item away. In another VIP room, Nine Dragons Emperor's eyes shone as he stared at the magic whale skin. There were still a few days until the contest on Thunder Island began. If he could purchase the magic whale skin, he could upgrade one of his bronze speedboats. With this, he would have an easier time killing boss-grade sea monsters and obtaining thunder passes. When Melancholic Smile saw the crowd's excitement, she quietly released a sigh of relief. Now that everyone has seen the magic whale skin's attributes, let us proceed to the bidding. We will sell 3 sheets at a time. The starting price is 10,000 magic crystals, and each increment must not be lower than 500. Let us begin. As soon as Melancholic Smile announced the starting price, many players gasped. According to the current market price, 10,000 magic crystals was the equivalent of 2,500 gold. With that amount of money, one could purchase a relatively good plot of land in an NPC city. Moreover, magic crystals were far more precious than coins as they were more difficult to obtain. However, the high price wasn't the only reason these players were shocked. What surprised them more was Candlelight's ability to offer 3 magic whale skin sheets at a time. After all, a single sheet could not qualitatively transform a ship. However, 3 sheets could. What a ruthless price! Sirius chuckled as he shook his head. It seems Candlelight is going to take our money today. The competition at sea grew more intense with each passing day. If his guild could increase a high-ranking ship's performance by a rank, it would raise the guild's naval strength to new heights. While Sirius sighed, the price of the magic whale skins rose rapidly. 10,500 crystals! 11,000 crystals! 12,000 crystals! In just 10 seconds, the price had soared to 15,000 magic crystals. One could purchase epic equipment with that kind of money. Big Sis Rain, what should we do? We have already lent our magic crystals to Zero Wing. We have less than 5,000 crystals on hand. Blue Phoenix asked anxiously as she watched the price of the magic whale skin continuously increase. She also felt that Zero Wing was too insincere. Rather than offering such a valuable item to them, Zero Wing had chosen to auction it. Phoenix Rain could only reveal a bitter smile in response. She had been racking her mind to figure out a way to increase her fleet's strength. She had even led a team of experts to the Death Whisper Fortress personally to obtain ship-strengthening items. Only after many sacrifices had she gotten her hands on a mysterious iron-strengthening item. On the other hand, without anybody noticing, Zero Wing had dark gold strengthening items. Immediately, Phoenix Rain called up her friends list and contacted Chiffon. Team Leader Yifone, I wish to use the magic crystals I lent you to purchase the magic whale skins that are currently on auction. Will that be possible? Phoenix Rain asked. Of course. That won't be a problem. I'll notify the auctioneer right away. However, your maximum limit will be the 250,000 magic crystals you lent our guild. I can't make the decision if the price is higher than that, Chiffon said earnestly. One of the reasons that he had generously offered the magic whale skins for auction was to show everyone Zero Wing's foundations. In any case, he had 8 sheets in total. He only needed 5 to strengthen the Hurricane's sailboat. Using the remaining 3 on speedboats or common small sailboats would be a waste. It would be more beneficial to sell them. The second reason was to pay back his debt. After all, he had yet to return the 250,000 magic crystals he had borrowed from Phoenix Rain. If he tried to offer her the top-tier dark gold weapons or equipment that he had obtained from the Dark Arena, it was unlikely that Phoenix Rain would be interested. Only something like the magic whale skin, which could increase one's naval strength, would garner Phoenix Rain's attention. Hearing Chiffon saying so, Phoenix Rain relaxed. There were still 5 days until the debt was due. Zero Wing could easily reject her request. 20,000 crystals. Phoenix Rain instantly placed a frightening bid. As expected of the players in the VIP rooms. They can afford to place such insane bids casually. Both independent players and guilds in the first floor hall were astonished by Phoenix Rain's bid. Even first-rate guilds were fortunate if they had a stockpile of 60,000 magic crystals. After all, there were too few sources. Moreover, their daily consumption was considerably high. It was impossible to stockpile so many. Spending 20,000 magic crystals just to strengthen a single ship was simply too much of a luxury. Only super first-rate guilds and super guilds were capable of such a thing. 21,000 crystals. 9 Dragons Emperor frowned as he placed a new bid. The Holy City slots were his main goal. Hence, he hadn't prepared many magic crystals. He currently had 24,000 crystals on hand. After all, a small guild like Zero Wing should not be capable of offering anything worth his while. Now, however, it was too late for him to send his subordinates to collect more magic crystals. Ha! It seems the other powers haven't come prepared. Yuan Tianxin chuckled. Following which, he shouted, 30,000 crystals. The secret pavilion had prepared plenty of coins and magic crystals for the candlelight auction. After all, the secret pavilion had done business with Zero Wing many times before, so they knew that Zero Wing possessed strong foundations and had many items that could even tempt the secret pavilion. However, Yuan Tianxin had never expected to find such an opportunity. 31,000 crystals. Phoenix Rain placed a new bid, but she didn't raise it by much. While the magic whale skin was valuable, its price was already high. Any higher and one could afford a bronze speedboat. 35,000 crystals. Yuan Tiexin said without hesitation. 36,000 crystals. Phoenix Rain frowned as she glanced at Yuan Tiexin's room a short distance away. This was the highest she was willing to go. Although she had plenty of magic crystals, she could not waste them. The other audience members were stupefied. The cost of 3 magic whale skins could already rival half of a first-rate guild's magic crystals. It seems that they have reached their limit. Yuan Tiexin smiled. 40,000 crystals. The other superpowers might only want the magic whale skin to fortify a bronze speedboat. However, the secret pavilion was in possession of a mysterious iron speedboat. 3 magic whale skins could almost put their ship on par with a secret silver speedboat. A secret silver speedboat! He wouldn't even blink at spending 100,000 magic crystals on such a ship, much less 40,000. The instant he placed his 40,000 crystal bid, the venue fell silent. After Melancholic's smile knocked the gavel 3 times and confirmed the sale, a gasp echoed throughout the auction house. The major powers that had scolded the Candlelight trading firm for fraud had run out of comments. The first auction item had sold for 40,000 magic crystals. They had to admit that the Candlelight auction was high quality. Only they still thought that the processing fees for the bartering session were somewhat expensive. However, not long after these major powers had such thoughts, the second auction item was revealed above the stage. Every one of these major powers stared in silence. Even the various superpowers were no exception. The reason for such a reaction was that the second item was none other than the Thunder Pass. Chapter 1270 The Cost of Arrogance. Chapter 1270 The Cost of Arrogance. Thunder Island was no longer a secret among the various major powers. Even some second-rate guilds with powerful information networks knew about the island. Various superpowers were frantically collecting Thunder Passes, but these weren't easily obtainable, requiring a lot of manpower and resources. Each additional Thunder Pass would allow them to bring 10 more experts to Thunder Island. When the contest for Thunder Island's authority began, the superpower with the most Thunder Passes would have a greater advantage. Hence, the various superpowers constantly offered to purchase Thunder Passes at a high price, attracting plenty of adventurer teams to sail the Sea of Death and kill sea monsters. Only, there had been no news of any adventurer team obtaining passes even now. Nevertheless, the Candlelight trading firm was selling a Thunder Pass. It was truly hard to imagine that an upstart guild's auction could consecutively offer 2 treasures that could tempt the various superpowers. Moreover, they had already announced the final item, the Holy City's slots. How could these major powers not be shocked? Now that everyone has seen our second auction item, without further ado, we will begin the bidding at 3,000 magic crystals. Each increment cannot be lower than 100 crystals. Begin! Melancholic Smile announced the starting price. This price surprised many of the players in the first floor hall. They all thought it was outrageously high. However, the various superpowers on the second floor made nothing of it. On the contrary, they all felt it was considerably cheap. After all, they normally offered 1,000 gold per pass. 4,000 crystals! 4,300 crystals! 5,000 crystals! As soon as Melancholic Smile opened the floor for bids, the various superpowers, which initially had little interest in the Candlelight auction, contested madly for the Thunder Pass. These superpowers gave the players in the first floor hall no opportunities to intervene, raising the price again and again. Even the participating second-rate guilds felt out of their league in this auction. As for the players and guilds that had scolded the Candlelight trading firm for being fraudulent, none of them dared to make a peep. Eventually, Phoenix Rain won the Thunder Pass for 8,300 magic crystals. Pavilion Master, are we letting Phoenix Rain have the pass just like that? Martial Dragon asked curiously. It doesn't matter. Any higher and the pass wouldn't be worth it. In any case, Rain has 10 extra slots. They're not enough to make a difference. Nine Dragons Emperor growled, sneering. After giving the matter some thought, Martial Dragon agreed with his guild leader. They had far more slots than Phoenix Rain. Even if she had 10 more, the increase wouldn't be enough to affect the big picture. Following the end of the second item's bidding, Melancholic's smile gestured to the image above the stage once more. However, the image remained the same as before. Smiling, she said, "Let's begin the auction for the third item. The third item is another Thunder Pass. Like before, the starting price is 3,000 magic crystals. Begin." "What? There's more!" Gasps echoed throughout the venue. Thunder Passes were extremely difficult to obtain. Obtaining one was already an amazing feat, yet Zero Wing had another to offer. Even Phoenix Rain was surprised. Of course, she was also elated. Although it was only one more entry pass, there was a huge difference between 10 and 20. Fortunately, among the superpowers present, she had the most magic crystals to spend. As soon as the auction began, the Thunder Pass's price instantly rose to 8,000 magic crystals. Unlike before, the various superpowers paid more attention to the Thunder Pass this time. They, too, realized what kind of consequences they would suffer if another power had 20 additional slots. The competition for the second Thunder Pass intensified. Eventually, however, Phoenix Rain obtained the second Thunder Pass for 15,400 magic crystals. Although the price was astoundingly high, Phoenix Rain felt that the money had been well spent. Just when everyone believed that the competition for the Thunder Passes had ended, Melancholic's smile pointed at the Thunder Passes image once again. "This is insane! Just how many Thunder Passes do they have?" The players in the auction venue involuntarily shuddered. This was especially true for the various superpowers in the second-floor VIP rooms. They could tolerate a single power obtaining 1 or 2 passes as it wouldn't significantly impact the outcome. However, if the candlelight trading firm sold too many Thunder Passes, the balance would change, affecting the contest. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Melancholic's smile did not immediately start the next round of bids. Instead, she took 3 Thunder Passes from her bag, stupefying everyone present. How do they have so many passes?" Nine Dragons' Emperor shook as he stared at the 3 Thunder Passes in Melancholic's smile's hand. He found it truly unbelievable that Zero Wing had obtained so many passes. Despite the scarcity of Thunder Passes in the Sea of Death, Zero Wing had 5. The Dragon Pavilion Master previously had only 60 slots more than Phoenix Rain. He could ignore losing the 2 Thunder Passes, as he still had a considerable advantage over Phoenix Rain even then. However, if Phoenix Rain won these 3 Thunder Passes as well, the difference between their teams would be negligible. "This won't do! I must obtain these passes!" Nine Dragons' Emperor commanded. "Notify Bell and have him send all our magic crystals immediately." "Pavilion Master, I've already notified him. However, it will take at least 10 minutes before they arrive." Martial Dragon reported. 10 minutes? Damn it! Why so long? Regret and anger filled Nine Dragons' Emperor's eyes as he stared at the 3 Thunder Passes. "Notify Zero Wing's auctioneer. Tell her that we request a delay." Had the candlelight trading firm stated beforehand that such items would be sold, he never would have been caught off guard. In reality, Nine Dragons' Emperor wasn't the only person to react that way. Even guilds such as Pantheon, Miracle, King's Return, Battle Wolves, and Sacred Temple were caught flat-footed. After all, nobody would have imagined that there would be such frightening items offered at the candlelight auction. They had prepared only the lands required to purchase the Holy City slots. Almost at the same time, the representatives of the various superpowers all reported back to the upper echelons of their respective guilds, having their guilds send magic crystals over. Aside from this, they also contacted the candlelight trading firm asking for a delay in the auctioning of the Thunder Passes or permission to use other items as collateral. This scene stunned the various major powers and adventurer teams present. After all, asking for a delay in the auctioning of an item was a relatively humiliating thing to do, as this would show that one had insufficient funds. Despite that, the various superpowers of God's domain were actually willing to cast away their reputation. It was truly inconceivable. "Guild leader, are we going to delay the auction of the Thunder Passes?" Melancholic Smile asked after contacting Sherfone. Currently, 5 superpowers had requested a delay, something not commonly seen. If it were any other first-rate guild holding this auction right now, they would definitely acquiesce without hesitation. We can delay the auction, but tell them that they need to compensate us for the time lost. Every minute's delay will cost them 300 gold. They are welcome to delay the auction for as long as they want. Sherfone replied nonchalantly. Guild leader, this? Melancholic Smile's heart skipped a beat when she heard his answer. Don't worry about it. Just tell them as is, Sherfone said, chuckling. There were only a few days left until the contest over Thunder Island. At this point, practically all boss-grade sea monsters that could be killed had already been killed once before. Even if one killed the boss-grade sea monsters that respawned, the likelihood of a Thunder Pass dropping would be very low. After all, only a limited number of Thunder Passes could drop during each contest cycle. The only reason he had managed to obtain so many Thunder Passes was the King-class sea monster he had killed. If he did not make a killing off these superpowers now, he would be doing that King-class sea monster a disservice. Melancholic Smile fell speechless at Sherfang's words. Her guild leader was a little too good at earning money. However, since it was a command from her guild leader, Melancholic Smile had no choice but to repeat Sherfang's words to the 5 superpowers. Chapter 1271 Frantic Struggle. Chapter 1271 Frantic Struggle. Pavilion Master, Candlelight is clearly trying to extort us. Martial Dragon's expression darkened when he heard Melancholic Smile's reply. They would have to pay 3,000 gold if they wanted to delay the auction of the Thunder Passes for 10 minutes. Such a sum was enough to purchase a considerably good plot of land in an ordinary NPC city. Although 3,000 gold was nothing to the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion, they would be fools to accept this offer. At this moment, Nine Dragons Emperor also had an ugly expression on his face. This damnable Zero Wing! Nine Dragons Emperor pounded his fist on the armrest of his chair. In a chilling tone, he said, Let them have it! Isn't it just 3,000 gold? I'll have Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing pay it back 100-fold in the future. If he did not stop Phoenix Rain from obtaining the remaining 3 Thunder Passes, the struggle on Thunder Island would undoubtedly become more troublesome. Meanwhile, the other 4 superpowers also paid the 3,000 gold without hesitation. After all, acquiring the 3 Thunder Passes would greatly bolster the forces they could send to Thunder Island. In just a brief moment, Sherfone earned 15,000 gold, enough money for him to buy a golden land in a major NPC city. While the bidding for the Thunder Passes was on hold, Melancholic Smile continued auctioning one item after another. Meanwhile, every one of these items was highly contested by the players in the first floor hall. Some of these items were on commission from other players, while some were dark gold weapons and equipment from Zero Wing's warehouse. The fine gold rank magic light set equipment that was auctioned managed to garner the attention of those on the second floor. The various major powers knew full well how difficult it was to obtain such high-level set equipment. Despite all their efforts in challenging level 50-plus monsters, they had yet to get even a piece of level 50 fine gold equipment, much less fine gold set equipment. In the end, the secret pavilion bought the magic light set equipment for 4,000 gold. Meanwhile, each one of the 100 advanced mana armor kits offered sold for roughly 150 gold. After the auction of the advanced mana armor kits came to an end, the sale of the bronze engineering locomotives began. Nowadays, the various major powers in God's domain were frantically collecting high-ranking mounts as well as equipping their elite members with common mounts. They all understood that the era of mounts had already arrived. If they did not quickly equip their guild members with mounts, they would end up trailing the other guilds before long. After all, once players had mounts, they could save up on plenty of travel time. High-ranking mounts even possessed combat capabilities. Now that the Candlelight trading firm was selling bronze mounts, the various major powers naturally wouldn't let this opportunity get away. I believe everyone has seen the bronze engineering locomotives attributes already. The starting price will be 150 gold, and each increment must not be lower than 10 gold. Begin! The moment Melancholic Smile announced the start of the auction, Whether it was the various large guilds or adventurer teams, they all began placing bids fervently. 160 gold. 170 gold. 180 gold. In the blink of an eye, the price of the bronze engineering locomotive reached 350 gold. Just as everyone believed that the price of the mount would stop at 400 gold, a new bid came from one of the second-floor rooms. 600 gold, Yuan Tianxin declared. It's just a bronze mount, yet the guy in that room is actually offering 600 gold? He might as well use the money to buy a top-tier dark gold weapon. Everyone was astonished by Yuan Tianxin's bid. While they understood that bronze mounts were extremely rare, they were definitely unwilling to spend 600 gold to obtain one. Uncle Yuan, we could have gotten the mount for just 500 gold. Why did you offer 600? Purple Jade asked curiously. After the price reached 400 gold, the representatives of first-rate guilds no longer showed much interest. It would have even been possible to obtain the engineering locomotive for just 460 or 470 gold, yet Yuan Tianxin had offered 600 gold. Even if the secret pavilion was rich, they should not be wasting their money in such a way. This is an order from the guild leader. He has tasked us with purchasing every engineering locomotive that comes up. If I only bid 500 gold this time, other people will still harbor some hope of purchasing it later on. If I offer 600 gold at once, they will give up on trying for the mounts that come up later on in the auction. Yuan Tianxin explained, chuckling. What? Didn't we already obtain plenty of engineering locomotives from Zero Wing before? Moreover, many of our experts frequently raid ancient ruins to collect high-ranking mounts. We shouldn't be lacking in bronze mounts, right? Purple Jade asked, confused. It is precisely because we have obtained so many engineering locomotives from Zero Wing that we have even more reason to purchase every one of them that appears today. Yuan Tianxin replied, smiling. Originally, I also thought that there was nothing special about the bronze engineering locomotives. Their base attributes are even weaker than those of other bronze mounts. However, when 50 engineering locomotives are gathered within a certain range, they will gain a buff called Mechanical Heart. The buff increases the mount's movement speed by 15% and both the rider's and mount's defense by 20%. This buff will greatly assist teams in both travel and battle. They actually have such an effect? Purple Jade was shocked. She immediately understood why the guild leader wanted to purchase all of the bronze engineering locomotives. Large guilds often conducted team operations. If they could fully equip a 50-man team with bronze engineering locomotives, the team's efficiency would increase considerably. Following which, the secret pavilion instantly purchased every bronze engineering locomotive that went up on auction. Although some first-rate guilds tried to compete for the mount, the secret pavilion shut them down with a significantly higher bid. None of them got any chance whatsoever. In the end, the secret pavilion purchased all 10 mounts that were offered. Consequently, people also started recognizing the standard of the candlelight auction. At the same time, the atmosphere in the auction venue grew increasingly heated. When Melancholic's smile revealed the 3 thunder passes before everyone once again, the entire hall went into an uproar. The reason for such a reaction was everyone's desire to see the various superpowers going all out in bidding for the passes. Let us begin bidding for the next auction item. The starting price for these 3 thunder passes will be 10,000 magic crystals. Each increment may not be lower than 1,000 crystals. Begin! As soon as Melancholic's smile finished speaking, the struggle between the various superpowers present began. Only, before the crowd on the first floor could enjoy the pleasure of watching this auction, they heard a bid that made even the various first-rate guilds present shudder involuntarily. 50,000 crystals! 9 Dragons Emperor shouted. With the bid rising to 50,000 crystals right off the bat, the first-rate guilds present that were entertaining thoughts of competing for the Thunder Passes were immediately disqualified. Meanwhile, everyone present was also shocked by 9 Dragons Emperor's wealth. Just to obtain 3 entry passes, 9 Dragons Emperor had bid the equivalent of a first-rate guild's entire stockpile of magic crystals. 53,000 crystals! 55,000 crystals! 60,000 crystals! Phoenix Rain called out a new price. Now, just one Thunder Pass costs 20,000 magic crystals. Have these superpowers lost their minds? The players on the first floor hall were stupefied. Melancholic Smile was also shocked. She could not comprehend why the various superpowers were going so crazy over a few entry passes. However, Melancholic Smile and the others did not realize Shifeng's intent in selling 3 Thunder Passes at once. The difference in the number of Thunder Island slots each superpower currently possessed was not particularly large. At this point, the number of slots each superpower wielded also wouldn't undergo any massive changes. The addition of these 30 slots might very well become the straw that broke the camel's back. Hence, the various superpowers naturally wouldn't give up on competing for them so close to the contest for Thunder Island's authority. Otherwise, wouldn't all their previous efforts in obtaining Thunder Passes go to waste? Chapter 1272 Growth of the Guild. Chapter 1272 Growth of the Guild. Just as everyone was feeling shocked at the wealth of the various superpowers, a new bid appeared once again. 70,000 crystals! Are magic crystals rocks? The players in the first floor hall felt their minds going numb when they heard this price. The bids were actually rising in increments of 10,000 magic crystals. In the past, they only knew that the superpowers of the virtual gaming world were existences that should not be provoked, as the disparity was simply too big. Now, however, it would seem that the gap between both sides was far larger than they imagined it to be. 80,000 crystals! Sirius shouted without hesitation. Too much profit was at stake on Thunder Island. At this crucial moment, the Battle Wolves naturally could not afford to fall behind. Hence, the guild had mailed 300,000 magic crystals to Sirius in order to obtain the last 3 Thunder Passes. In reality, though, obtaining the additional 30 slots was only secondary to the Battle Wolves Guild. The crucial point was that these 30 slots must not fall into the hands of another power. Shortly after Sirius placed his bid, the representative from Miracle raised the price by another 10,000 crystals. In less than a minute, the price for the 3 Thunder Passes had already reached an astronomical sum of 250,000 magic crystals. They sure are desperate. Shifeng was greatly surprised when he heard this figure. Although he had long since known that the Thunder Passes would fetch a high price, he had never imagined that they would be this valuable. Just 3 Thunder Passes would already allow him to settle his debt with Phoenix Rain. Big Sis Rain, what should we do? We don't have that many magic crystals left anymore, Blue Phoenix said anxiously. The person who placed the 250,000 crystal bid was 9 Dragons Emperor. If 9 Dragons Emperor obtained the 3 passes, he would definitely suppress their side during the contest on Thunder Island. Phoenix Rain also frowned at this scene. She never thought that the situation would develop in this manner. If it were the other powers that obtained the passes, she wouldn't have minded it that much. However, if 9 Dragons Emperor got the passes, she would lose her chance to become the great Pavilion Master. After a moment of silence, Phoenix Rain's lips curled up into a bright smile. However, her smile also carried a hint of bitterness. She immediately contacted Shifeng once again. Team Leader Yifeng, I wish to borrow 300,000 magic crystals from Zero Wing, Phoenix Rain said, smiling. Of course, I won't be borrowing it for nothing. I will use 2 golden shops in 2 of the Apocalypse Empire's top 3 NPC cities as collateral. If I cannot return 400,000 magic crystals in 7 days, those 2 golden shops will become the Candlelight Trading Firm's possession. Big Sis Rain! Blue Phoenix jumped up in fright when she heard Phoenix Rain's words. Those 2 golden shops are the foundations of the Phoenix Pavilion. Although the Apocalypse Empire was very large with a high player population, it had only 8 NPC cities that had a player population of over 5 million. Meanwhile, the 2 golden shops Phoenix Rain mentioned were located in 2 of the 7 other major NPC cities, aside from the Imperial capital. Currently, the value of these 2 golden shops was not 1 bit inferior to the Candlelight Trading Firm in White River City. How could they possibly use such important assets as collateral? I understand what I'm doing, Phoenix Rain said determinedly. Hearing this response, Blue Phoenix fell speechless. With the Phoenix Pavilion's current state, How could they possibly collect 400,000 magic crystals in just 7 days? As expected of the Demon Queen, the actions she takes are truly flawless. Sherfone was inwardly surprised by Phoenix Rain's offer. Although using the 2 golden shops as collateral might seem greatly disadvantageous to Phoenix Rain, in reality, that wasn't entirely the case. After all, whether Phoenix Rain managed to repay her debt or not, she would not make a loss. If she succeeded in redeeming her debt, she could simply retrieve her shops. Even if she failed, the shops would become the Candlelight trading firm's possessions, not Zero Wing's. There was a huge difference between the shops falling into the Candlelight trading firm's hands and Zero Wing's. After all, Phoenix Rain owned 20% of the Candlelight trading firm's shares. If the Candlelight trading firm grew stronger through the addition of those 2 shops, the profits Phoenix Rain received from her shares would increase as well. Moreover, if converted to coins, 300,000 magic crystals would be equivalent to 75,000 gold, a sum that already exceeded the startup costs of those 2 shops. While this might seem like a risky deal for Phoenix Rain, in reality, the loss she would make would be minimal. Team leader Yifeng, what is your decision? Phoenix Rain asked, smiling. When Sherfone looked at Phoenix Rain in the screen, he suddenly felt as if he was the one borrowing money from her. From beginning to end, it was as if the initiative in this trade was in her hands, not his. All right, you have a deal. However, the magic crystals will be left with the Candlelight trading firm for now. Once the auction is over, I'll hand over the remainder to you. Sherfone nodded. Phoenix Rain's conditions were indeed difficult to refuse. If the Candlelight trading firm could branch out to 2 cities with populations rivaling that of White River City, the potential profits were simply frightening, particularly now that the various large guilds were placing more focus towards exploring ancient ruins. He had even more need for the golden shops of the Apocalypse Empire's major NPC cities, to sell the lunar potion. Following which, Sherfone and Phoenix Rain signed a contract through the system. When Blue Phoenix watched Phoenix Rain signing the contract, she suddenly realized an extremely important matter. Despite its extreme importance, her mind had in fact automatically forgotten about this matter every time it occurred, treating it as if it was only natural. Before coming into contact with Zero Wing, the latter had been only a small guild that received help from them secretly. Yet, after some time, the guild was now a source of significant income. Zero Wing had even become a guild that could actually be of help to them. When Blue Phoenix thought of Zero Wing's growth speed, she could not help but have goosebumps. Even a guild supported by a major corporation could not compete with Zero Wing in development speed. Meanwhile, during this time, the price for the 3 Thunder Passes had already reached 280,000 magic crystals. This price caused many superpowers to give up on bidding. Of course, if powers like Miracle, Sacred Temple, King's Return, and Battle Wolves wanted to, they could still compete for the Thunder Passes. However, letting 9 Dragons Emperor obtain the 3 Thunder Passes would not have any effect on their performance on Thunder Island. Hence, rather than waste a ton of magic crystals, these superpowers came to a silent agreement not to increase the bid any further. Pavilion Master, with this, we will definitely have a huge lead over Phoenix Rain on Thunder Island. Not only will we be able to send more men to harass her group, but we can also dispatch more men to carry out our original plans. Hearing melancholic smiles Gavilan for the second time, Marshal Dragon sneered as he looked towards Phoenix Rain's room. Although I've spent quite a lot this time, as long as I can surpass Phoenix Rain on Thunder Island, all of this will be worth it. A smile appeared on 9 Dragons Emperor's face. Although he had prepared quite a lot, he only had a total of 330,000 magic crystals on hand. If the other powers continued contesting for the Thunder Passes, he would not be able to put up a struggle. Just as the gavel was about to land for the 3rd time, however, a new bid appeared in the auction venue. 300,000! Didn't she run out of magic crystals already? 9 Dragons Emperor was confused as he looked at Phoenix Rain's room. However, a possibility very quickly occurred to him. Damn that Zero Wing! They actually lent magic crystals to her. 310,000! However, 9 Dragons Emperor was also helpless to do anything about this situation. He had no choice but to continue bidding. As for the other superpowers, they had already given up on fighting over this bottomless pit, because regardless if Phoenix Rain or Nine Dragons Emperor obtained these 3 Thunder Passes, the 2 of them would not be able to affect their results on Thunder Island at all. 320,000! 330,000! 340,000! Phoenix Rain continued increasing her bid without hesitation. When the price reached 340,000 crystals, Nine Dragons Emperor was thoroughly defeated. He could only watch as the gavel in Melancholic Smile's hand landed one time after another. In the end, the 3 Thunder Passes fell into Phoenix Rain's hands. Seeing this outcome, the various major powers grew exceedingly envious of Zero Wing. Zero Wing had managed to earn 340,000 magic crystals just by selling 3 Thunder Passes. This was practically even more profitable than robbing a bank. After the auction for the Thunder Passes came to an end, the remaining items that came up did not garner much interest from the various superpowers. Only the players seated in the first floor hall bid for them. Although the prices of the items were not particularly high, the quantity was much higher. Time passed quickly. As one item after another sold for a high price, one of the highly anticipated finale items finally appeared before everyone. The Personal Houses of Stone Forest Town. Chapter 1273 Enviable Zero Wing. Chapter 1273 Enviable Zero Wing. The moment the image of Stone Forest Town's personal houses appeared, the players in the first floor hall grew restless. Apart from the Holy City slots, these players had come to the candlelight auction to see Stone Forest Town's personal housing. The various major powers might ignore the personal houses, but to independent players, these houses were extremely important. If I can get a house, I can easily travel to Stone Forest Town's battle arena. I can definitely surpass those other experts. Using the houses in Stone Forest Town as a training ground isn't a bad idea either. Many independent experts and adventurer teams' eyes shone with excitement when they saw the personal house's introduction. Stone Forest Town had undergone a qualitative transformation since the last war. Not only was the town's mana density much higher, but the number of wandering merchant NPCs visiting the town continued to increase. Most importantly, more expert players had been attracted to the town. Every day, Stone Forest Town hosted hundreds of duels between experts, and anyone was free to watch. One could also participate in the Battle Arena's tournaments, fighting for the chance to learn the rumored combat techniques and enjoy more benefits in the establishment. However, traveling to and from Stone Forest Town was somewhat inconvenient as the town didn't have any teleportation arrays for public use. If they could purchase a personal house, traveling to and from Stone Forest Town would be a lot easier. Now that everyone has seen the personal houses, the starting price is 300 gold per unit, and each increment must not be lower than 10 gold. Begin! As Melancholic Smile finished speaking, the first floor's players shouted one bid after another. 310 gold! 320 gold! 500 gold! The price's rise was simply staggering. With 500 gold, one could purchase a considerably good house in an NPC town. However, it was obvious that the price had yet to reach its limit. Only after the price reached 610 gold did it finally stop. After watching the first house sell, the various major powers grew envious. Constructing a house in a player town was extremely cheap, with the cheapest only costing 20 gold and the pricey houses costing up to 100 gold. However, the more expensive a house was, the more space it occupied. Needless to say, to maximize their land use, Zero Wing would have constructed the 20 gold houses rather than the 100 gold houses. Now, every one of these 20 gold houses sold for more than 600 gold. The candlelight auction sold a total of 50 houses, but it was nothing compared to the number of adventurer teams and independent players present. The following houses sold for much higher prices than the first. Among the 50 houses, the most expensive had sold for 740 gold. On average, the houses had sold for 650 gold. By auctioning the 50 houses, Zero Wing had made 32,500 gold. Although this was spare change to superpowers, to first-rate guilds, it was a massive sum of money. It was enough to equip many of their elite members with common mounts. Guild leader, this is a rare opportunity. Why don't we sell a few more units? Melancholic Smile contacted Shifeng and suggested after seeing the players' disappointment. It was clear that the number of houses they had offered was far from enough to satisfy the demand. No. We'll stick with our original plan. We want them to learn about the benefit of Stone Forest Town's houses first. In the future, we'll be able to sell the houses for a higher price. Shifeng instantly rejected the proposal. Although Stone Forest Town could accommodate many more houses, he had other plans for the town, Stone Forest Town's migration plan in particular. By the time that plan came to fruition, they would attack far more players, and the houses would fetch a much higher price. He had simply offered these 50 units to introduce everyone to the benefits of owning a house in Stone Forest Town. When the auction for the personal houses came to an end, the various superpowers in the second-floor rooms focused on the stage. The next auction item was the reason they had come to the candlelight auction: the slots to enter the holy city of Titan. To ordinary guilds, these slots were not of much use. However, it was a different story for superpowers like themselves. The slots could help some of their famous lifestyle players become true masters. A master lifestyle player had the power to transform their trading firms. Their trading firms would earn ample profits. Naturally, this would increase their guild's development as well. So, this is the holy city of Titan? A white-bearded, old man muttered, his eyes glowing as he read Titan City's introduction. Sirius, you must get me a slot to the holy city as per our agreement. The screen above the stage did not explain the holy city slots. Rather, it displayed information about the holy city itself. One such detail was the Titan Lifestyle Association. The information revealed that the establishment's workshops, which players could rent, had a mana density far greater than the basic meditation rooms. Moreover, the floating island contained research rooms, and players could use these rooms to study various materials. There were also plenty of Master Rank production videos. There were even Grand Master Rank production videos available. However, players were required to enter the Advanced Research Room to gain access. Only, entering these research rooms was very costly. The basic research room alone cost 200 gold per day, the intermediate versions costing 500 gold per day, and the advanced versions costing 1,200 gold per day. The various superpowers gasped when they saw these prices. Moreover, both the intermediate and advanced versions required a certain amount of reputation in Titan City to rent. Master Fire, rest assured, the Battle Wolves always stick to our word. We will definitely obtain a slot for you, Sirius responded respectfully. At the same time, the other powers' fighting spirit roared to life as they swore to obtain slots for themselves. Now that everyone has seen the Holy City slots, the starting price is 500 gold, and each increment must be no lower than 100 gold. If you don't have enough money, you may offer cities' lands as collateral. However, we will only evaluate the lands at market price. Begin! After Melancholic Smile announced the next round's rules, the venue's atmosphere reached its boiling point. 500 gold! 600 gold! 800 gold! In the blink of an eye, the price had reached 3,000 gold, shocking every player present. The first-rate guilds soon gave up on the Holy City slots. They could already purchase a relatively good plot of land in an ordinary NPC city with that kind of money. The only players remaining in the competition were the second-floor superpowers. The Holy City slots were similar to the Thunder Passes. To those who needed them, they were worth a ton of money. To those who didn't, however, they were utterly worthless. Every superpower had a batch of lifestyle players who were so close to their master ranks. Unfortunately, these lifestyle players weren't familiar enough with God's domain's materials and production techniques, unable to cross that final hurdle. As long as they obtained the Holy City slots, these superpowers were confident in nurturing a master lifestyle player and improving their respective trading firms. They would easily rake in far more than this investment. 5,000 gold! Sirius instantly increased the price by 2,000 gold. That lunatic! It seems he's hellbent on getting this slot. The other superpowers shook their heads and gave when they heard this price. While they could afford it, it had exceeded their initial expectations. Although they were rich, their money did not grow on trees. Moreover, the various superpowers were preparing for the contest on Thunder Island. They did not have that much money to waste. Hence, they decided to let Sirius have the first slot. In any case, there were 10 slots up for grabs. Even if split equally among their 7 superpowers, they could each obtain at least one slot. They didn't have to rush. They could watch the battle wolves whittle away their funds and wait until they dropped out of the competition. Following which, the bidding for the second slot began. 5,000 gold! Sirius shouted once more. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.